My father is rich, mocks the police chief's son, sentenced to life for killing the housemaid. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The courtroom was silent. Not the comfortable kind of silence that settles over a room when people are simply waiting. This was different. This was the heavy, suffocating silence that comes when everyone knows something terrible is about to happen, and there's absolutely nothing anyone can do to stop it. Judge Margaret Hartwell sat behind the bench, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, looking down at the papers in front of her. She'd been a judge for 23 years. She'd seen murders, assaults, robberies. She'd sentenced men twice her size to life in prison without flinching. But today, her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the microphone. In the defendant's chair sat a young man, 17 years old. Red hair, neatly combed, freckles across his nose that made him look even younger than he was. He wore a gray suit that fit him perfectly. Expensive, tailored, the kind most people in that courtroom would never be able to afford. His wrists were in handcuffs, the metal glinting under the fluorescent lights. His name was Garrett Cole, and he was about to be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The gallery behind him was packed. Reporters filled the first 3 rows, their notebooks open, pens ready. Behind them sat the town's most prominent citizens, business owners, teachers, city council members, and in the very back, almost hidden in the corner, sat a small group of people who looked out of place. They wore simple clothes. Their faces were tired. They didn't belong to the world of power and influence that had defined this trial. They were there for the victim. Judge Hartwell cleared her throat. The microphone crackled. Garrett Michael Cole, she began, her voice steady but cold. You have been found guilty by a jury of your peers of murder in the first degree. The evidence presented in this case was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before reaching their verdict. Garrett didn't move. He stared straight ahead, his expression blank, almost bored. The judge continued. This court has heard testimony from forensic experts, law enforcement officers, and witnesses who painted a clear picture of what happened on the night of March 14th. A young woman lost her life, a woman who came to this country seeking a better future, a woman who worked tirelessly to support her family back home, a woman whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. In the back of the room, a woman in her 50s began to cry softly. She held a photograph in her hands, a picture of a young woman with dark hair and a bright smile. The victim's aunt. She'd flown in from another state to be here for the sentencing. Judge Hartwell took a deep breath. Garrett Cole, it is the judgment of this court that you be remanded to the custody of the Department of Corrections to serve a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The gavel came down. One sharp crack that echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. And that's when it happened. Garrett smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a smile of disbelief or shock. This was something else entirely. It was slow, deliberate, almost playful. The corner of his mouth curled up as if he'd just heard a private joke that no one else in the room would understand. 2 officers stepped forward to escort him out. They gripped his arms, one on each side, preparing to lead him through the side door that would take him to the holding cells below the courthouse. As they lifted him to his feet, Garrett turned his head slightly to the left. His eyes found the lead prosecutor, a woman named Andrea Walsh, who had spent 6 months building the case against him. She stood at her table, her expression a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Garrett looked directly at her, and then he spoke. His voice was quiet, barely above a whisper, but in the absolute silence of that courtroom, everyone heard it. My father is rich. 4 words. That's all it took. Andrea's face went pale. The officers froze for just a fraction of a second, their grips tightening on Garrett's arms. In the gallery, several people gasped. The reporters started scribbling furiously. Judge Hartwell's eyes narrowed. Remove the defendant, she said sharply. The officers moved quickly, pulling Garrett toward the door, but he didn't resist. He walked calmly, that same slight smile still on his face, as if he were leaving a school assembly rather than a courtroom where he'd just been sentenced to spend the rest of his life. Behind bars. As the door closed behind him, the courtroom erupted. Reporters jumped to their feet, trying to get quotes from the attorneys. The victim's family sat in stunned silence, and in the front row, behind where Garrett had been sitting, a man in his 50s stood up slowly. Chief Robert Cole, Garrett's father. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with the kind of commanding presence that made people instinctively move out of his way. He'd been the chief of police in Millbrook Falls for 15 years. Before that, he'd served as a detective for another 10. Everyone in town knew him, respected him, feared him in some cases. He wore his dress uniform today, navy blue with gold buttons, a chest full of commendations and service ribbons. His face was expressionless, carved from stone. He didn't look at the prosecutor. He didn't look at the judge. He didn't look at anyone. He simply turned and walked out of the courtroom, his footsteps echoing in the chaos. Outside, the March wind was cold and sharp. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes pointed toward the sky. Reporters stood in clusters, preparing their live shots for the evening news. Guilty verdict in the Cole murder trial. Sentenced to life without parole. The son of the police chief convicted of killing the family's housekeeper. The words swirled through the air, carried on the wind, spreading through the town like wildfire. But here's the thing that no one watching those news reports would understand. The thing that the jury never heard. The thing that almost stayed buried forever. This story, this case, wasn't really about a murder trial. It was about something much darker. It was about power, about privilege, about how far a family will go to protect one of their own, about how money can bend reality itself, turning truth into fiction and victims into ghosts. It was about a system designed to protect people like Garrett Cole, and it was about the one person who refused to let that happen. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To understand how Garrett Cole ended up in that courtroom, smiling as he was sentenced to life in prison, we need to go back. Back to before the trial, before the arrest, before the morning when a young woman's body was found in the Cole family's guest house. We need to go back to when everything looked perfect, when the Coles were the most respected family in Millbrook Falls, when Chief Robert Cole was a hero, and his son Garrett was just a bright, promising teenager with his whole future ahead of him. We need to go back to the beginning, because that's where the real story starts, not with a guilty verdict, not with a sentence, but with a lie so carefully constructed, so expertly maintained that it nearly worked, a lie that came within inches of letting a killer walk free. The truth is, Garrett Cole's smile in that courtroom wasn't arrogance, it was a performance. One last attempt to control the narrative, even as the walls closed in around him. One last reminder that he came from power, from money, from influence. One last threat disguised as a statement of fact. My father is rich, but money can't buy everything. And as we'll see, sometimes the truth has a price that even the wealthiest family can't afford to pay. This is the story of how a small-town police chief tried to use his badge, his reputation, and his bank account to save his son from justice. It's the story of how a forgotten woman became impossible to ignore. And it's the story of how a single sentence, 4 simple words, spoken in a moment of arrogance, became the confession that changed everything. Welcome to Millbrook Falls, population 8,342, home to 3 churches, 2 diners, 1 high school, and a secret that nearly destroyed them all. 6 months earlier, September in Millbrook Falls was the kind of beautiful that belonged on a postcard. The maple trees lining Main Street had just started to turn, their leaves shifting from green to brilliant shades of orange and red. The air carried that crisp quality that made people want to wear sweaters and drink hot coffee on their front porches. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, where you couldn't go to the grocery store without running into at least 3 people you'd known since elementary school, where the biggest news of the week was usually whether the high school football team won their Friday night game. On the surface, Millbrook Falls was perfect, and no family embodied that perfection more than the Coles. Their house sat at the end of Birch Lane, a tree-lined street on the north side of town, where the properties got bigger and the mailboxes got fancier. It was a large colonial-style home, painted white with black shutters, surrounded by precisely manicured hedges and a lawn that looked like it belonged on a golf course. A circular driveway led to the front entrance. In that driveway sat 3 vehicles: Chief Cole's official police SUV, a silver Mercedes sedan that belonged to his wife, Catherine, and a red Jeep Wrangler that Garrett had received for his 17th birthday 6 months earlier. Inside the house, everything was just as carefully arranged as the lawn outside. The living room featured leather furniture, expensive artwork on the walls, and a grand piano that Catherine had played exactly twice since they'd bought it. The kitchen had been recently renovated with marble countertops and stainless steel appliances that gleamed under recessed lighting. Every surface was clean. Every cushion was perfectly placed. Every family photograph was perfectly framed. It looked like a house from a magazine, but it didn't feel like a home. Catherine Cole stood in the kitchen that September morning, preparing breakfast. She was 43 years old, blonde, elegant in the effortless way that comes from having both money and time. She wore a cream-colored cashmere sweater and pearl earrings. Even though she had no plans to leave the house that day, she moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency, cracking eggs into a bowl, slicing fruit, brewing coffee in the expensive machine that Robert had insisted they needed. Her movements were precise, automatic. She'd made this same breakfast 1,000 times before. At exactly 7:15, Robert came downstairs. He was already in uniform, his badge gleaming on his chest. At 51, he still had the build of the athlete he'd been in college: broad shoulders, strong hands, a presence that filled whatever room he entered. His hair was starting to gray at the temples, which only made him look more distinguished. "Good morning," Catherine said, not looking up from the stove. "Morning." His voice was clipped, professional, the same tone he used at work. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, opening his tablet to read the overnight police reports. They didn't speak again. This was normal. This was how breakfast worked in the Cole household. Polite, efficient, quiet. At 7:30, Garrett appeared. He moved down the stairs slowly, earbuds in, lost in whatever music was playing on his phone. He wore expensive jeans and a designer hoodie. His red hair was still messy from sleep, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "You're up late," Robert said, not looking up from his tablet. Garrett pulled out one earbud. "What?" "I said you're up late. School starts at 8. "I know." "What time school starts, Dad?" Catherine placed a plate in front of Garrett. Scrambled eggs, turkey bacon, fresh fruit. He looked at it like she'd served him garbage. "I'm not hungry." "Eat something," Robert said. It wasn't a suggestion. Garrett picked up a piece of bacon, took one bite, and dropped it back on the plate. "Happy?" The tension in the room shifted. Catherine's shoulders stiffened. Robert's jaw clenched. But neither of them said anything. This, too, was normal. "Don't forget you have SAT prep tonight," Catherine said quietly, refilling Robert's coffee cup. Garrett rolled his eyes. "I know. And Coach Matthews wants to talk to you about—" "I know, Mom. Jesus." "Watch your tone," Robert said sharply. Garrett stood up, grabbing his backpack from the counter. "I'm going to be late." He was out the door before either parent could respond. Catherine began clearing the breakfast. Dishes, her movements a bit faster now, a bit less controlled. Robert returned to his tablet, but his eyes weren't really reading anymore. "He's just tired," Catherine said softly, more to herself than to her husband. Robert didn't respond. At 7:45, a third person entered the kitchen. Her name was Elena Ruiz. She was 28 years old, originally from Honduras, though she'd been living in the United States for 6 years. She was petite, barely 5 feet tall, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She wore simple clothes, dark pants, a gray shirt, comfortable shoes. She moved into the kitchen quietly, almost apologetically, as if trying not to disturb the space she was entering. "Good morning, Mrs. Cole," she said softly. Catherine turned, her expression shifting into something warmer, though not quite warm. "Good morning, Elena. Did you sleep well?" "Yes. Thank you." This was a script they performed every morning. Polite questions, polite answers. The careful maintenance of a professional relationship that was supposed to feel personal, but never quite did. Elena had been working for the Cole family for 8 months. She lived in the guest house behind the main property, a small converted garage apartment with a bedroom, bathroom, and kitchenette. In exchange for room and board plus a modest salary, she cleaned the house, did the laundry, ran errands, and occasionally helped Catherine with cooking. She sent most of her paycheck back to Honduras to her mother and her younger sister who were still there. She was invisible in the way that people in her position often are. Present, but not noticed. Essential, but not acknowledged. "I'll be out this morning," Catherine said, rinsing her coffee cup. "Doctor's appointment. I should be back around 11. Can you start on the upstairs bedrooms?" "Of course, Mrs. Cole." Robert stood checking his watch. "I need to head in. We've got a meeting with the mayor at 9. He looked at Catherine. "I'll probably be late tonight. Budget review." "All right." He kissed her on the cheek, a brief, perfunctory gesture, and walked out. The sound of his SUV starting echoed through the quiet house. Catherine left 10 minutes later. And then Elena was alone. She moved through the house with quiet efficiency, gathering cleaning supplies from the hall closet. She'd learned the routine quickly when she first started working here. Mondays and Thursdays were deep cleaning days. Tuesdays and Fridays were laundry and errands. Wednesdays were flexible, whatever Catherine needed. Today was Thursday. She started with Garrett's room. It was always the worst. Clothes on the floor, empty energy drink, cans on the nightstand, homework papers scattered across his desk. She'd learned not to touch anything on the desk. He'd complained once that she'd messed up his system, so she worked around it. As she picked up the clothes, she noticed something. A smell. Faint but distinct. Alcohol. She found the source quickly. An empty vodka bottle shoved under the bed, poorly hidden behind a gym bag. Elena hesitated. She'd found alcohol in his room before. Twice. Both times she'd quietly disposed of it and said nothing. It wasn't her place to comment on what the family did. She needed this job. She needed the money. She carried the bottle downstairs, wrapped it in newspaper, and buried it at the bottom of the trash can in the garage where no one would see it. Then she went back to work. By noon, she'd finished the bedrooms and moved to the main living areas. She dusted the piano, vacuumed the rugs, wiped down the kitchen counters until they gleamed. Catherine returned just after 11:30, carrying shopping bags from the boutique downtown. "How's everything going?" she asked, setting the bags on the counter. "Good, Mrs. Cole. All finished upstairs." "Wonderful." Catherine began unpacking. The bags, new throw pillows for the living room, new hand towels for the guest bathroom, things they didn't need but bought anyway. "Oh, Elena, I'm having some friends over for lunch tomorrow. Nothing formal, just a small group. Can you prepare that chicken salad recipe? The one with the grapes?" "Yes, of course. And make sure the dining room looks nice. Use the good china." "I will." Catherine smiled, that same practiced pleasant smile she used with everyone, and disappeared upstairs with her shopping bags. Elena returned to her work. This was her life. This was normal, but over the past few weeks something had started to feel different. Nothing she could put her finger on exactly. Just a sense that the carefully maintained order of this household was beginning to crack. She'd noticed the way Garrett looked at his father during breakfast. Not with respect, but with something that looked almost like contempt. She'd noticed the way Catherine's hands shook slightly when she thought no one was watching. She'd noticed the way Robert's voice got colder, sharper, more controlled whenever Garrett challenged him. She'd noticed the silences. In her experience, silence in a house like this was never just absence of noise. It was presence of something else, something waiting, but she said nothing. She cleaned, she cooked, she stayed quiet. Because that's what you did when you were someone like Elena Ruiz living in someone else's perfect house. You kept your head down, you did your job. You didn't ask questions. That evening, Garrett came home from SAT prep around 8 o'clock. Elena was in the kitchen preparing dinner for the family. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, a salad. He walked past her without acknowledgement, heading straight for the stairs. "Garrett," Catherine called from the living room. "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. Not hungry. You need to eat something." "I said I'm not hungry." His door slammed upstairs. Catherine appeared in the kitchen doorway, her expression tight. "Just set 3 places," she told Elena quietly. "Yes, Mrs. Cole." When Robert came home at 9:30, dinner had been ready for over an hour. Catherine had kept it warm in the oven. They ate in silence, just the two of them, while Elena cleaned up the kitchen. After they finished, Robert retreated to his study. Catherine went upstairs. Elena returned to the guest house. From her window, she could see into Garrett's room on the 2nd floor. The light was on. She could see his silhouette moving back and forth, pacing. At 11 o'clock, she saw him leave. He climbed out of his bedroom window onto the roof of the garage, then dropped down into the backyard. She watched him walk across the lawn and disappear into the darkness beyond the property line. She'd seen him do this before. 3 times now, over the past month. She never mentioned it to anyone. The next morning, Friday, the routine repeated itself. Robert left at 7:45. Catherine left at 8:30. Garrett didn't come down for breakfast at all. And Elena cleaned the house that would never quite feel clean. But that afternoon, something changed. Elena was in the laundry room folding Catherine's delicates when she heard voices. Raised voices, coming from upstairs. She froze, listening. "I don't care what your friends are doing." That was Robert's voice, louder than she'd ever heard it. "It's none of your business, Garrett. Everything you do is my business. You live in my house. You drive a car I bought. Yeah, I know. You never let me. Forget it. Watch yourself." "Or what? You going to arrest me, Chief?" The sound of something hitting a wall. Elena flinched. Then silence. Long, terrible silence. She stood perfectly still, barely breathing, waiting. Finally, she heard heavy footsteps. Robert descending the stairs, the front door opened and closed. His SUV roared to life and peeled out of the driveway. Elena remained frozen in the laundry room. After a few minutes, she heard Garrett's door open. He came downstairs, grabbed his keys from the hall table and left as well. The house fell silent again. But this time the silence felt different. It felt like the moment before a storm breaks, like the air pressure changing right before lightning strikes. Elena finished folding the laundry, her hands moving automatically while her mind raced. She told herself it was none of her business. She told herself every family had arguments. She told herself she was imagining things, but deep down, in a place she didn't want to acknowledge, she knew something was wrong in this house, something that went deeper than teenage rebellion or parental frustration, something that made her skin prickle with unease every time she walked through those perfectly decorated rooms. That night, Elena lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling. Through her window, she could see Garrett's light was still on at 2 in the morning. And she wondered, not for the first time, what exactly she'd gotten herself into when she'd taken this job. What kind of family really lived behind those white walls and black shutters? What secrets were hiding in that perfect house? She didn't know it yet, but in less than 3 weeks she would find out. And the answer would cost her everything. Elena Ruiz had learned to be invisible long before she came to Millbrook Falls. Growing up in San Pedro Sula, the 3rd largest city in Honduras, she'd watched her mother work 3 jobs to support the family after her father died. Her mother cleaned houses during the day, worked in a restaurant kitchen at night, and took in laundry on weekends. Elena had seen firsthand how people like them, people without money, without connections, without power, survived by staying quiet, working hard, and never making trouble. When Elena was 22, her mother got sick. Diabetes, complications from years of stress and poor nutrition. The medical bills piled up faster than they could pay them. Elena's younger sister, Maria, was still in school. Someone had to do something. So Elena made the decision that thousands of young women from Central America make every year. She would go north. The journey took 3 months and cost nearly everything the family had saved. Elena didn't like to think about those 3 months. The people she'd trusted who'd betrayed her, the places she'd slept, the moments when she genuinely believed she wouldn't survive. But she had survived. She'd made it across the border. She'd found work in Texas, then Oklahoma, then finally here in upstate New York. Each job was the same, cleaning houses for families who barely noticed she existed. And that was fine. She preferred it that way. Being invisible meant being safe. The Saturday after the argument between Robert and Garrett, Elena woke early as usual. The guest house was cold. The heating system didn't work well, but she'd never mentioned it to the Coles. She pulled on her warmest sweater and made instant coffee on the small hot plate in her kitchenette. Through her window, she could see the main house. All the lights were off. Except for one, the kitchen. Catherine was already awake, probably making breakfast even though it was only 6:30 in the morning. Elena had learned Catherine's patterns over the past 8 months. The earlier Catherine woke up, the more anxious she was. On good days, she slept until 7. On bad days, she was in the kitchen by 5:30, cooking elaborate meals that no one would eat, organizing cabinets that were already organized, finding any task that would keep her hands busy and her mind occupied. Today was clearly a bad day. Elena waited until 7 before crossing the lawn to the main house. She used her key to enter through the back door, the one that led directly into the mudroom. "Good morning, Mrs. Cole," she called softly as she entered the kitchen. Catherine looked up from the stove where she was making pancakes. Her eyes were red-rimmed and her makeup was applied. Bit more heavily than usual, as if trying to cover something. "Oh, Elena, good morning." Her smile was bright, brittle. "I'm making blueberry pancakes. Garrett's favorite. He used to love these when he was little." Elena nodded, setting her bag down on the counter. She'd learned that sometimes. Catherine just needed someone to listen, even if the listening was mostly silent. "I thought maybe if I made his favorite breakfast, we could all sit down together, like we used to." Catherine flipped a pancake, her movements jerky. "It's been so long since we had a nice family breakfast." "That sounds lovely," Elena said quietly. At 7:30, Robert came downstairs. He looked at the stack of pancakes on the counter, at Catherine's hopeful expression, and his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I have to go in early today," he said, pouring coffee into a travel mug. "Situation. Downtown." "Oh." Catherine's face fell. "But I can't, Catherine. It's work." "Of course I understand." He was gone within 5 minutes, leaving behind a kitchen that smelled like blueberries and disappointment. Catherine stood at the stove, spatula in hand, staring at nothing. "Should I get Garrett?" Elena asked gently. Catherine blinked as if remembering Elena was there. No, let him sleep. He was out late last night. I heard him come in around 3. She began scraping the pancakes into a Tupperware container, her movements mechanical. "You can have some if you'd like." "Elena?" "Thank you, Mrs. Cole." Elena took 2 pancakes to be polite, though she wasn't hungry. She ate them standing at the kitchen island while Catherine busied herself wiping down counters that were already clean. "Mrs. Cole," Elena said carefully, "is everything all right?" Catherine looked up, surprised. For a moment her mask slipped. Elena saw exhaustion there and something that looked like fear. But then Catherine's smile snapped back into place. "Everything's fine, just fine." "Why do you ask?" "No reason. I just wanted to make sure." "That's sweet of you." Catherine's voice was warm but distant, already pulling back behind her walls. I'm going to run some errands this morning. Can you do the usual Saturday cleaning and maybe organize the linen closet? I think it's gotten a bit messy. The linen closet was perfectly organized. Elena had done it herself 2 weeks ago. Of course, she said. After Catherine left, the house fell into that particular kind of silence that only comes when you're alone in someone else's space. Elena moved through the rooms with practiced efficiency, but her mind kept returning to what she'd witnessed over the past few weeks. The arguments. The tension that hung in the air like smoke. The way Garrett looked at his parents with something that went beyond typical teenage resentment. The way Robert's voice got colder and more controlled whenever he spoke to his son. The way Catherine pretended everything was fine while her hands shook and her eyes stayed red. Elena had worked for enough families to recognize the signs of a household coming apart at the seams, but she'd also learned that recognizing something and being able to do anything about it were two very different things. She was upstairs, changing the sheets in the master bedroom, when she heard the front door open and close. Garrett's voice carried up the stairs. He was on the phone. Yeah, I'll be there. No, they don't care. I said they don't care, man. They're too busy pretending everything's perfect. His footsteps moved toward the kitchen. Elena continued. Working, trying not to listen, but voices carried in this house. I don't know, maybe an hour? Yeah, bring it. No, he's at work like always. Dude, I'm telling you, it's fine. The refrigerator opened and closed. More footsteps. Then the sound of the garage door opening. Garrett's Jeep. Starting up, pulling out. The house was silent again. Elena finished the master bedroom and moved to Garrett's room. She knocked first. Catherine had insisted on that rule, but there was no answer, so she entered. The room was its usual disaster. Clothes everywhere, empty cans and bottles, school, books that clearly hadn't been opened in weeks. But as Elena began picking up the scattered items, she noticed something different. On Garrett's desk, partially hidden under a hoodie, was a notebook. Elena normally wouldn't have touched it. She respected privacy, even when cleaning. But as she lifted the hoodie to fold it, the notebook fell open. She shouldn't have looked. She knew she shouldn't have looked. But she did. The pages were covered in Garrett's handwriting. Not schoolwork. These were notes, thoughts, fragments of sentences that made Elena's stomach tighten with unease. They think they know everything. He thinks his badge makes him God. She's pathetic, always trying to fix things that can't be fixed. Nobody understands, nobody sees. And then, on the next page, something that made Elena's hands go cold. Sometimes I think about what it would be like if they were just gone. If I could start over, if I could be free. Elena closed the notebook quickly, her heart pounding. She set it back exactly where it had been, covered it with the hoodie, and backed away from the desk as if it had burned her. She told herself it was just teenage angst, just a kid working through difficult emotions the way teenagers do. Writing dark thoughts in a notebook didn't mean anything, but her hands were shaking as she finished cleaning the room. That afternoon, Catherine returned with more shopping bags. She seemed calmer, or perhaps just more medicated. Elena had noticed the prescription bottles in the master bathroom, noticed how Catherine's mood would shift after taking her afternoon pills. Elena, dear, I'm going to need you to stay a bit late tonight, Catherine said, unpacking groceries in the kitchen. Robert's department is having a dinner. Party. Important people from the city council. And I want everything to be perfect. Can you help me with the preparations? Yes, Mrs. Cole. Wonderful. They'll be here at 7. We'll need to set up the dining room, prepare appetizers, make sure the bathrooms are spotless. For the next 3 hours, Elena worked alongside Catherine, transforming the already immaculate house into something even more perfect. They arranged flowers, polished silver, set out the expensive china that only came out for special occasions. At 6:30, Robert arrived home, already in his dress uniform. He inspected the house with the same critical eye he probably used at crime scenes, nodding his approval. "Looks good," he said to Catherine. "Not thank you. Not great job. Just looks good." Garrett appeared at 6:45, summoned by his father. He'd showered and changed into khakis and a button-down shirt, looking every bit the promising young man his parents wanted people to see. But Elena noticed his eyes, slightly red, slightly unfocused. She wondered what he'd been doing all afternoon. The guests began arriving at 7. Elena served drinks, passed appetizers, smiled politely. When spoken to and otherwise remained invisible. She'd done this before at other houses, for other families. It was a skill she'd perfected, being present but not noticed, helpful but not intrusive. She watched the Coles perform. Robert held court in the living room, telling stories about his years. On the force, his voice warm and engaging in a way it never was at home. People listened to him with respect, with admiration. He was a hero to these people, the man who kept their town safe. Catherine floated through the rooms like a gracious hostess from a different era, making sure everyone had drinks, steering conversations, laughing at jokes. She looked beautiful, poised, happy. No one would ever guess she'd been crying over pancakes that morning. And Garrett. Garrett played his part perfectly. He shook hands with the adults, answered questions about school with practiced humility, even charmed the mayor's wife with a story about his college aspirations. He was polite, well-spoken, the kind of young man any parent would be proud of. It was all performance. Elena could see it because she understood performance. She performed every day, the grateful immigrant, the helpful employee, the woman who didn't see or hear the things she saw and heard. But watching the Coles perform together was different. It was coordinated, rehearsed, almost choreographed. A family playing the roles of a family for an audience that desperately wanted to believe the show was real. Around 9:30, as Elena was refilling glasses in the kitchen, she overheard part of a conversation from the dining room. "You've done an incredible job with that boy, Robert," someone was saying. 17 years old and already thinking about pre-law at Cornell. "You must be so proud." "We are," Robert replied. "Garrett's worked very hard. We've made sure he understands the value of discipline, of service, of doing what's right. He's got a good role model," another voice chimed in, "following in his father's footsteps." "Well, we'll see where life takes him," Robert said, and Elena could hear the smile in his voice. "But yes, I'd be honored if he chose to serve his community the way I have." Through the doorway, Elena could see Garrett sitting at the table, that same pleasant smile on his face, nodding at his father's words. But she could also see his hands under the table clenched, into fists so tight his knuckles were white. The party ended around 11. Elena helped Catherine clean up while Robert said goodbye to the last guests. Garrett had disappeared upstairs immediately after the mayor left. "That went well," Catherine said, loading the dishwasher. She seemed genuinely happy for the first time all day. "Did you see how impressed everyone was? The mayor even mentioned Garrett in his speech. That's wonderful for Robert's career." "Yes, Mrs. Cole. You can go home now, dear. Thank you for staying late. I'll add the extra hours to your paycheck." "Thank you, Mrs. Cole." Elena gathered her things and walked across the dark lawn to the guest house. It was nearly midnight. She was exhausted, but she knew she wouldn't sleep well. She kept thinking about Garrett's notebook, about the words she'd read. "Sometimes I think about what it would be like if they were just gone." She told herself again that it meant nothing. Teenagers wrote dramatic things, it was normal, but something in her gut said it wasn't normal. Something in her gut said she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to see. And in 3 weeks, when everything fell apart, Elena would remember this moment. She would remember reading those words. She would remember the chill that had run down her spine. She would remember knowing, somewhere deep and instinctive, that something was very wrong in that perfect house. But tonight, she did what she always did. She stayed quiet. She minded her business. She remained invisible. because that's what kept you safe. Or so she thought. As Elena finally drifted off to sleep around 1 in the morning, she didn't know that across the lawn, in the main house, Garrett was sitting at his desk, adding new entries to his notebook. She didn't know that. Robert was in his study, drinking scotch and staring at department files he'd brought home. She didn't know that Catherine was in the master bathroom, taking pills that weren't prescribed, trying to quiet the anxiety that had been building for months. And she didn't know that in less than 3 weeks, this carefully constructed world of performance and pretense would shatter completely. All she knew was that something felt wrong, and she had no idea how right she was. The thing about patterns is that once you start seeing them, you can't unsee them. Elena had always been observant. It was a survival skill she'd developed young, reading people's moods, anticipating their needs, knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. In her line of work, being able to read a room could mean the difference between keeping a job and losing it. But what she was seeing in the Cole household went beyond the usual family tensions she'd witnessed in other homes. This was different. This was systematic. It started with small things most people wouldn't notice. The week after the dinner party, Elena began keeping track in her head. Not intentionally at first, just observations that accumulated, patterns that emerged. Monday morning, Garrett came down for breakfast at 7:15. Robert was already at the table reading something on his tablet. When Garrett reached for the orange juice, Robert spoke without looking up. SAT scores came in. Garrett's hand froze. And 1460. The number hung in the air like an accusation. That's pretty good, Garrett said, his voice careful. Now Robert looked up. Pretty good? Your cousin Jason got a 1520. Yale material, his father said. You know what 1460 is? Garrett's jaw tightened. What? State school material. Maybe. Catherine was at the stove, her back to both of them, but Elena saw her shoulders stiffen. I can retake it, Garrett said quietly. You'll retake it, Robert corrected. And you'll do better. Because Coles don't settle for pretty good. Right. Garrett's voice was flat. Coles are perfect. Coles understand excellence. Robert stood, draining his coffee. You're signed up for the December test. I expect to see at least 100-point improvement. He left without waiting for a response. Garrett sat there for a long moment, staring at his untouched breakfast. Then he grabbed his backpack and walked out, leaving his food on the table. Catherine turned around, saw the full plate, and her face crumpled slightly before she caught herself. He's just not hungry, she said to no one in particular. Elena collected the plate without comment. Tuesday. Afternoon. Elena was folding laundry in the upstairs hallway when she heard Garrett's voice from his room. He was on the phone, his door slightly ajar. I don't care what he wants. Yeah, well, he wants a lot of things. No, I'm not going to fucking Cornell just because he decided. I said I don't want to talk about it. A pause. You know what his problem is. He thinks buying me stuff means he owns me. The car, the clothes, the stupid SAT prep. It's all just, it's control, man. It's all about control. Another pause, longer this time. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I just stopped playing along. If I told him to shove his Cornell application and his 14-fucking-60 and his whole perfect sun routine. Elena moved quietly away from the door, her arms full of towels. Wednesday evening, Robert came home at 6:30, earlier than usual. Elena was in the kitchen helping Catherine prepare dinner, chicken marsala, one of Robert's favorites. Catherine, he called from the hallway. Not honey, not dear, just Catherine. She immediately put down the wooden spoon and went to him. Elena continued stirring the sauce, but she could hear everything. From the kitchen. I need you to do something for me, Robert said, his voice low. Of course, what is it? Mayor Chen's wife mentioned that Garrett seemed distracted at the party. Unfocused, she said. He was fine. He was perfectly polite. I didn't ask if he was polite, I asked. Robert stopped. Himself modulated his tone. I need you to pay more attention, watch what he's doing, who he's talking to, where he's going. Robert, he's 17. Teenagers need privacy. He needs guidance, structure, and apparently he's not getting enough of it. That's not fair. Fair. Robert's voice got quieter, which somehow made it more dangerous. Do you know what's not fair? Having a son who could have every opportunity in the world but chooses to waste his potential because no one's holding him accountable. I am holding him accountable. Then do it better. Silence, then Robert's footsteps, heading to his study. Catherine stood in the hallway for a long moment before returning to the kitchen. Her hands were shaking as she picked up the wooden spoon. Are you all right, Mrs. Cole? Elena asked softly. Fine. I'm fine. But her voice was tight, compressed. Can you finish this? I need to make a phone call. She left the kitchen quickly. Elena finished preparing dinner alone, listening to the sounds of the house. Robert's voice from the study, talking to someone on the phone about budget allocations. The creak of floorboards upstairs, Garrett moving around in his room. The distant sound of Catherine's voice from the master bedroom, though Elena couldn't make out the words. This was the Cole family at 6:45 on a Wednesday evening. Separate, isolated, each of them alone in their designated spaces of this too-big house. Thursday morning, Elena arrived at 7 as usual. The kitchen was empty, which was unusual. Catherine was almost always up by this time. Elena began making coffee, preparing for the day's work. At 7:30, she heard raised voices from upstairs. Then footsteps, fast, angry footsteps. Garrett appeared at the top of the stairs. His face flushed. You went through my room? Robert emerged behind him, still in his pajamas, which Elena had never seen before. He was always dressed before coming downstairs. I didn't go through anything. Your mother was putting away laundry. Bullshit. She doesn't do the laundry, Elena does. And Elena doesn't go through my stuff. Elena froze in the kitchen, the coffee pot forgotten. Watch your language, Robert said, his voice deadly calm. Why? You going to arrest me for cursing in my own house? This isn't your house. This is my house. You live here because I allow it. The words hit like a slap. Even from the kitchen, Elena could feel their impact. Right, Garrett said after a moment. Your house, your car, your money, your perfect little world where everything is exactly how Chief Cole wants it. That's not, when does it become mine? When do I get to make my own choices? When do I get to be something other than your fucking project? When you prove you can handle it, when you stop acting like a child and start taking responsibility. I am taking responsibility. I go to your stupid SAT prep. I apply to your stupid schools. I show up at your stupid parties. And smile for your stupid friends. Lower your voice. Why? Afraid the neighbors will hear? Afraid they'll find out the great Chief Cole's son isn't perfect? Robert came down 3 stairs. His face was still calm, but something had changed in his eyes. Go to your room. I'm 17, not 7. I said go to your room. They stared at each other. Elena held her breath. Finally, Garrett turned and went back upstairs. Not to his room. Elena heard the bathroom door slam instead. Robert stood on the staircase for a long moment. Then he noticed Elena in the kitchen doorway. Their eyes. Demas, for just a second, Elena saw something in his expression that made her blood run cold. Not anger. Something colder than anger. Something calculating. Then his professional mask snapped back into place. Good morning, Elena, he said pleasantly, as if nothing had happened. Is there coffee? Yes, Chief Cole. Just made it. Wonderful. He came down the rest of the stairs, poured himself a cup, and went to his study as if it were any other morning. Elena stood in the kitchen, her heart racing, wondering what exactly she'd just witnessed. Friday afternoon, Catherine asked Elena to drive her to the pharmacy. She'd been asking Elena to run errands with her more frequently lately, and Elena suspected it was less about needing help and more about needing company. They drove in Catherine's Mercedes, the leather seats spotless, the interior smelling faintly of expensive perfume. How long have you been in the United States, Elena? Catherine asked as they pulled out of the driveway. 6 years, Mrs. Cole. Do you miss home? Elena considered the question. Sometimes, but my family needs the money I send. So this is where I need to be. Catherine nodded, staring out the window. Sacrifice, she said softly. We do what we have to do for family. At the pharmacy, Catherine picked up 3 prescriptions. Elena glimpsed the labels: Xanax, Ambien, and something else she didn't recognize. In the car on the way back, Catherine was quiet for a long time. Then suddenly she spoke. Elena, can I ask you something? Of course, Mrs. Cole. Do you think I'm a good mother? The question caught Elena off guard. Yes, Mrs. Cole, of course. Really? Catherine's voice was small, almost childlike. Because sometimes I wonder if I've done everything wrong. If I've been too soft, too permissive. Robert says I let Garrett get away with too much. He says that's why Garrett is the way he is. Elena didn't know what to say. She kept her eyes on the road. I wanted to be different from my mother, Catherine continued. She was so cold, so distant. I wanted to be warm, loving. I wanted my son to know he was loved. She laughed, but it was hollow. But maybe Robert's right. Maybe love isn't enough. Maybe what Garrett needed was discipline, structure, consequences. Mrs. Cole, do you know what Robert said to me last night? He said that if I'd been a better mother, Garrett wouldn't be such a disappointment. The word hung in the air like poison. I'm sure he didn't mean. He meant it. Catherine's voice was flat now. He always means what he says. That's one thing about Robert. He's honest. Brutally honest. They pulled into the driveway. Catherine sat in the car for a moment, staring at the house. Sometimes I think about what it would be like to just drive away. Just keep driving and never come back. She turned to Elena, and there were tears in her eyes. Isn't that terrible? What kind of mother thinks things like that? Elena didn't know how to answer. She'd seen unhappiness before, in other houses, other families, but this felt different. This felt like drowning. You're very kind to listen to me, Catherine said, wiping her eyes carefully so as not to smudge her mascara. I'm sorry. I shouldn't burden you with my problems. It's no burden, Mrs. Cole. But it was. Because Elena was beginning to realize that she wasn't just cleaning this house. She was witnessing something. And she had no idea what to do with what she was seeing. That night, Elena lay awake in the guest house, unable to sleep. Through her window she could see the main house. Garrett's light was on. So was Robert's study. Catherine's bedroom was dark. 3 people in one house, all of them alone. She thought about the pattern she'd been observing, the way Robert controlled everything with quiet precision, the way Catherine medicated herself into compliance, the way Garrett was slowly being crushed between the weight of expectations and the cage of privilege. She thought about the words she'd read in Garrett's notebook. Sometimes I think about what it would be like if they were just gone. At the time, she'd thought he meant running away. But now, lying in the dark, Elena wondered if he'd meant something else entirely. Saturday morning brought a deceptive calm. Robert left early for a department training session. Catherine went to her book club. Garrett slept until noon. Elena cleaned the house, the routine so familiar now that her hands moved on autopilot while her mind churned. Around 2 in the afternoon, Garrett came downstairs. He looked terrible, hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes, still wearing the clothes he'd slept in. Hey, Elena, he said. It was the first time he'd actually addressed her directly in weeks. Good afternoon, she replied carefully. He opened the refrigerator, stared at its contents without taking anything, then closed it again. Can I ask you something? Elena paused in her dusting. Yes? Do you think I'm a disappointment? The question caught her completely off guard. That's not for me to say. But if you had to say, if someone put a gun to your head and made you answer, do you think I'm a disappointment? Elena looked at him, really looked at him. saw past the expensive clothes and the red hair and the mask of teenage arrogance. She saw a 17-year-old boy who was breaking. "I think," she said carefully, "that you are very young, and that you have time to become whoever you want to be." "But that's the thing." Garrett's voice was bitter. "I don't get to become whoever I want to be. I get to become whoever he wants me to be. And if I don't..." He trailed off. "If you don't?" Elena prompted gently. Garrett looked at her, and for just a moment she saw something in his eyes that made her deeply uneasy. Not sadness, not frustration, something darker. "If I don't," he said slowly, "then I'm nothing. I have nothing. I am nothing." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You know what's funny? He thinks the money, the house, the car, he thinks that's what keeps me in line. But it's not. It's the fact that without all that, without his approval, without his perfect plan for my perfect life, I literally don't know who I am." He walked to the window, staring out at the perfectly manicured lawn. "Sometimes I think about burning it all down," he said quietly. "The whole thing, the house, the plan, the person they want me to be, just destroying it all and starting over." Elena's hands had gone still. "That's a frightening thought." "Is it?" Garrett turned to face her. "Or is it the only honest thought I've had in years?" Before Elena could respond, they heard a car in the driveway. Catherine, home early. Garrett's expression shifted instantly, smoothly, like a mask sliding back into place. "Thanks for listening," he said, his tone suddenly light, casual. "I'm gonna go shower." He was gone before Catherine came through the door. Elena stood in the living room, her heart pounding, her mind racing. She'd heard something she shouldn't have heard, seen something she shouldn't have seen, and she had absolutely no idea what to do about it. That evening, the family had dinner together. Elena served pot roast and vegetables, watching the three of them sit around the dining room table like strangers in a restaurant. Robert cut his meat with precise mechanical movements. Catherine pushed food around her plate, eating almost nothing. Garrett stared at his phone until his father told him to put it away. They spoke in pleasantries, in safe topics, in the carefully neutral language of people who'd forgotten how to be honest with each other. But Elena could feel it. The tension beneath the surface. The anger hiding behind politeness. The desperation masked as normalcy. Something was building in this house. Something was coming. And when it finally arrived, it would shatter everything. After dinner, as Elena was loading the dishwasher, she heard Robert's voice from the study. "I don't care what strings you have to pull. I need it handled. No record, because I said so. Just make it disappear." She didn't know what he was talking about. Didn't know if it was police business or something else. But she knew the tone. It was the same tone he used when talking to Garrett. Control, power, the absolute certainty that rules didn't apply to him. Elena finished cleaning and returned to the guest house as darkness fell. She locked her door that night, though she'd never felt the need to before. And she slept poorly, waking at every small sound, her subconscious on alert for danger she couldn't quite name. In the main house, the lights stayed on late. In his study, Robert made phone calls and typed reports and moved pieces on a chessboard only he could see. In the master bedroom, Catherine took pills and pretended to read a book while tears ran silently down her face. And in his room, Garrett sat at his desk, writing in his notebook, the words getting darker and more desperate with each passing line. 3 people in one house, 3 people coming apart in different ways. 3 people who had no idea that in less than 2 weeks, everything they knew would end. The patterns were there, the warning signs were visible. The cracks in the foundation were spreading, but no one was paying attention. No one except Elena. And she was just the help. What could she possibly do? The call came at 6:43 on a Tuesday morning. Elena was in her small kitchen making instant coffee and preparing for another day of work when she heard the sirens. At first, she didn't think much of it. Millbrook Falls was a quiet town, but emergencies happened. Someone's grandfather having a heart attack, maybe. A car accident on the highway. The sirens were distant, not close enough to concern her. Then she heard more sirens, and more. Through her window, she saw the flash of red and blue lights turning onto Birch Lane. Her stomach dropped. She pulled on her shoes and stepped outside, just as 3 police cars, an ambulance, and Chief Cole's SUV came screaming up the driveway. The vehicles surrounded the main house like predators circling prey. Officers jumped out, moving with the kind of urgent purpose that made Elena's mouth go dry. She saw Robert emerge from his SUV, already in uniform, even though it wasn't yet 7 in the morning. His face was a mask of professional control, but something in the tightness of his jaw betrayed him. He knew what they were here for. Elena started walking toward the main house, her legs moving on instinct, even though everything in her body was screaming at her to run the other way. Catherine appeared at the front door, wrapped in her bathrobe, her hair uncombed, her face pale and drawn. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. "Robert?" Her voice carried across the lawn. "Robert, what's happening?" He didn't answer. He was talking to one of the officers, gesturing toward the guest house. Elena's guest house. Her steps faltered. "Ma'am," one of the officers called to her. "Ma'am, I need you to stop right there." Elena froze on the lawn halfway between her apartment and the main house. "What's happening?" she asked, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. More officers were moving now, heading around the side of the property, toward the guest house. One of them was carrying yellow crime scene tape. Crime scene tape. Elena's knees went weak. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Dawson," a young policeman said, approaching her carefully. His hand rested on his belt, not quite on his weapon, but close enough. "I need to ask you some questions. I don't understand. When did you last see Elena Ruiz?" The question didn't make sense. I am Elena Ruiz." The officer's face flickered with confusion. He pulled out a notepad, checked something. "You're the housekeeper?" "Yes." "What's going on? Why are the police here?" "Officer." Dawson exchanged a glance with another officer. Something passed between them, a look Elena couldn't quite read. "Ma'am, when did you last enter the guest house?" "Last night, around 10. I live there. Please, what's happened?" But the officer wasn't listening anymore. He was looking past her toward the side of the property where more officers had gathered. One of them was on his radio. Elena could hear fragments. "Confirmed. Need the coroner. Yes, definitely." Catherine's voice cut through the morning air, high and sharp. "Someone tell me what's happening." Robert went to his wife, placing a hand on her shoulder, speaking to her in low tones that Elena couldn't hear. Whatever he said made Catherine's face crumple. She put her hand over her mouth, stumbling backward into the house. "Ma'am," Officer Dawson said, pulling Elena's attention back, "I need you to come with me. We have questions about—" "Detective Marsh wants everyone to hold position," another officer interrupted, jogging over. "Nobody talks to anyone until he gets here." "Who's Detective Marsh?" Dawson asked. "State Police. Chief called him in personally." Elena stood on the cold lawn in her thin sweater, watching as her small apartment was transformed into a crime scene. More tape went up. Photographers arrived. A white van pulled into the driveway, the county medical examiner's office, according to the logo on the side. Nothing made sense. She'd left her apartment at 10 last night. She'd locked the door. She'd gone to sleep. What could have possibly happened between then and now? At 7:15, an unmarked sedan pulled up. A man in his 50s got out, tall, black, with gray at his temples and the kind of face that had seen too much. He wore a suit and tie, and he moved with quiet authority. As he approached Robert, they spoke for several minutes. Robert gestured toward the guest house, then toward Elena. The detective, Marsh, she assumed, nodded, asked questions, took notes. Finally, he walked over to where Elena stood with Officer Dawson. "Ms. Ruiz?" His voice was surprisingly gentle. "I'm Detective William Marsh with the State Police. I need to ask you some questions. Is that all right?" Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. Let's step over here. He guided her away from the other officers, toward a spot near the garage where they had some privacy. Ms. Ruiz, I understand this. Must be very confusing and frightening. I want to assure you that you're not in any trouble. We just need to understand what happened here. I don't know what happened, Elena said, her voice shaking. I went to sleep. I woke up. Then the police were here. Marsh pulled out a notebook. When you went to sleep last night, was anyone else in the guest house with you? No, I live alone. Did you hear anything unusual during the night? Voices, footsteps, anything at all? Elena tried to think back. Had she heard anything? I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure. That's okay, take your time. Sometimes I hear things from the main house, Elena said slowly. The walls aren't very thick, but last night... She closed her eyes, trying to remember. I think I heard a door, maybe around midnight, but I wasn't sure if I was dreaming. A door opening or closing. Closing, I think, but quiet. Like someone trying not to make noise. Marsh wrote this down. And after that? Nothing. I fell asleep again. He nodded, studying her face. Ms. Ruiz, did you notice anything unusual about the Cole family recently? Any arguments, strange behavior, anything that seemed out of the ordinary? The question made Elena's stomach twist. She thought about everything she'd witnessed over the past weeks. The fights, the tension, Garrett's notebook, Catherine's pills, Robert's cold control. But what was she supposed to say? That the family she worked for was falling apart? That their son talked about burning everything down? That sometimes, late at night, she heard things that made her skin crawl? They're a private family, she said carefully. But I didn't see anything that would... She trailed off. What happened? Please, no one will tell me what happened. Detective Marsh was quiet. For a long moment, his eyes searching hers. Then he made a decision. Ms. Ruiz, I'm very sorry to tell you this. We found a body in your apartment. The world tilted. Elena heard the words, but they didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. A body, she whispered. A young woman, early 20s, early. We believe she was killed sometime between midnight and 3 this morning. Elena's legs gave out. She would have fallen if Marsh hadn't caught her arm, guiding her to sit on the curb. Breathe, he said quietly. Just breathe. In my apartment? Elena couldn't process it. Someone was killed in my apartment? We don't have all the details yet, but yes, it appears that way. Who was she? Marsh hesitated. We're still working on identification. She didn't have any ID on her. Elena's mind was racing, spinning, trying to grab onto something that made sense. A dead girl. In her apartment, while she was sleeping. How was that possible? Ms. Ruiz, Marsh said gently, I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to think carefully. Is there any way someone could have entered your apartment without you knowing? She thought about the door, the cheap lock, the window that didn't quite close all the way. Maybe, she said. The lock isn't very good and I'm a heavy sleeper. If someone was quiet, does anyone else have a key to your apartment? Mrs. Cole, and I think Chief Cole does too. For emergencies. Marsh wrote this down without any change in expression. Have you ever had any visitors to your apartment? Friends, family, anyone? No, no one. I don't know many people here. What about the Cole family? Do they ever enter your apartment? Elena shook her head. Never. It's my space. They respect that. Even as she said it, though, doubt crept in. Did they respect it? Or had she just assumed they did because she'd never caught them? Across the lawn, she saw Robert talking to a group of officers. His posture was stiff, his gestures controlled. He looked every inch the chief of police managing a crime scene. But something was wrong. With the picture, it took Elena a moment to realize what it was. He'd arrived too quickly. The call had come at 6:43. She'd heard the sirens moments later. But Robert had been in uniform, had been here almost immediately. How had he known to come? Who had called him? Ms. Ruiz, Marsh's voice pulled her back. Are you all right? How did Chief Cole know to come? She asked. Who called the police? Marsh's expression shifted slightly. Chief Cole made the call himself. He discovered the body at approximately 6:30 this morning. Elena's blood ran cold. He found her. According to his initial statement, yes. He was doing a routine check of the property before heading to work and noticed the guest house door was ajar. He went inside to investigate and found the victim. The explanation made sense, but it also made no sense at all. Robert Cole never did routine checks of the property. That wasn't part of his routine. In 8 months, Elena had never seen him go near the guest house except when he'd shown it to her on her first day. Did you hear or see Chief Cole this morning before the police arrived? Marsh asked. Elena tried to remember. She'd been making coffee, looking out the window toward the main house. Had she seen Robert's SUV in the driveway? She didn't think so, but she hadn't been paying attention. I don't know, she admitted. I didn't notice. Marsh made another note. Then he looked up at her, and his expression was kind but serious. Ms. Ruiz, I need to be honest with you. This is going to be a complex investigation. A young woman was killed on this property, in your residence. You're going to be asked a lot of questions. Your apartment is going to be searched thoroughly. This is going to be difficult. I didn't do anything, Elena said, her voice breaking. I don't know who that girl is. I don't know why she was in my apartment. I didn't do anything. I believe you, Marsh said quietly. But I need you to understand something. In a case like this, everyone is a potential witness. Everyone is a potential suspect, including you. The word suspect hit her like a physical blow. I want to help, Elena said desperately. Whatever you need, I'll help. I just want to understand what happened. Marsh nodded. I appreciate that. For now, I need you to wait here. Don't go back to your apartment. It's a crime scene. Don't leave the property. We'll need a formal statement from you within the next few hours. He stood, preparing to rejoin the other investigators. Detective Marsh? Elena called after him. He turned back. The girl, Elena said. Can you tell me anything about her? What she looked like? Marsh considered this, then seemed to decide it was harmless information. Young, maybe 22, 23. Brown hair, about 5'6". She was wearing jeans and a dark jacket. Elena's mind raced through every young woman she'd seen in Millbrook Falls. In the grocery store, at the coffee shop passing on the street, but no one came to mind. No one who would have any reason to be in her apartment in the middle of the night. Unless a terrible thought occurred to her. Was there anyone else? She asked. In the apartment, I mean. Anyone with her? Marsh's expression became very careful. Why do you ask that? If someone brought her there, if someone... Elena couldn't finish the sentence. We're investigating all possibilities, Marsh said. That's all I can tell you right now. He walked away, leaving Elena sitting on the curb, shivering despite the morning sun that was starting to warm the air. Around her, the investigation continued. Officers moved in and out of the guest house. Photographers snapped pictures. The medical examiner's team went inside with their equipment. Someone had been murdered. In her home. While she slept. And she hadn't heard a thing. Elena looked toward the main house and saw Catherine standing at the kitchen window, watching. Their eyes met across the distance. Catherine's face was pale, her expression haunted. Then Catherine turned away, disappearing into the depths of the house. At 8 o'clock, a white van, marked County Medical Examiner, pulled around to the guest house. Elena watched as they brought out a stretcher. The body bag was small. The girl had been petite. Elena turned away, unable to watch as they loaded the remains into the van. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. But it was. And as the morning wore on, as more investigators arrived and the crime scene tape spread like a virus across the property, Elena began to understand something terrible. Her life, the quiet, invisible life she'd worked so hard to build, was over. The questions would start soon. Where were you? What did you see? Who do you know? Why was she in your apartment? And underneath all those questions would be the one that really mattered. Did you do this? She was the help, the immigrant, the outsider. She lived in the apartment where a girl had been murdered. Who would believe her when she said she knew nothing? Who would listen to someone like her over someone like Chief Robert Cole, pillar of the community, respected lawman, devoted father? Elena sat on the curb, her hands shaking, her mind spinning, and watched as her world collapsed around her. She didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. The real nightmare was still to come. By 9 o'clock, the entire town knew something terrible had happened at the Cole residence. News travels fast in small towns, and news involving the chief of police travels even faster. By the time the local news van pulled up, reporters were already calling, texts were flying, and neighbors were gathering at the end of Birch Lane, held back by yellow crime scene tape and uniformed officers. Elena watched it all from inside the main house, where she'd been relocated after giving her initial statement to Detective Marsh. She sat at the kitchen table, a cup of untouched coffee in front of her, while the organized chaos of a major investigation unfolded outside. Catherine was upstairs in her bedroom. Elena could hear her pacing, the floorboards creaking rhythmically overhead. Every so often the pacing would stop, and Elena would hear muffled crying. Robert was outside, moving between different groups of investigators with the confident stride of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. He pointed, gestured, gave instructions. From where Elena sat, he looked completely in control. But she'd noticed something. He hadn't gone. Back inside the guest house after the body was removed. Detective Marsh had gone in multiple times. The crime scene technicians had been in and out all morning. But Robert, the man who'd supposedly discovered the body, stayed outside, maintaining a careful distance. Elena didn't know what that meant, but she noticed it. Around 9:30, a black sedan pulled up and a woman in an expensive suit got out. She moved with purpose, bypassing the reporters, flashing some kind of credentials to the officers at the tape line. Elena watched as the woman went directly to Robert. They spoke for several minutes, their heads close together, voices low. Then Robert led her into his study, closing the door behind them. Officer Dawson, who'd been assigned to stay with Elena, though whether for her protection or surveillance she couldn't tell, noticed her watching. "That's the district attorney," he said. "Sarah Pemberton. Why is she here so quickly?" Dawson shifted uncomfortably. "High-profile case, chief's property. She'll want to make sure everything's handled properly." The way he said "properly" made Elena's skin prickle. 20 minutes later, the study door opened. The district attorney emerged, followed by Robert and a third person Elena hadn't noticed arrive. A man in his 40s wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. "That's Martin Voss," Dawson said quietly. "Best defense attorney in the county." "Defense attorney?" Elena looked at him. "Why would the chief need a defense attorney?" Dawson didn't answer. He suddenly seemed very interested in something on his phone. The three of them, Robert, the DA, and the attorney, stood in the hallway, speaking in voices too low to hear. But Elena could read their body language. The DA was asking questions. Robert was, answering, his posture relaxed, open. The attorney stood slightly behind Robert, his hand occasionally touching Robert's shoulder in a gesture that looked protective. After a few minutes, they moved to the front door. Elena heard fragments of conversation. Statement to the press. Control. The narrative before. Absolutely no comment until we. Then they were gone, heading outside where the media had gathered. Elena stood and moved to the window, watching as Robert positioned himself in front of the cameras. The DA stood to his left, the attorney to his right. A press conference. Improvised but expertly staged. Robert's voice carried across the lawn, amplified by the news microphones. I want to thank everyone for their patience during this difficult time. As many of you know, a tragic incident occurred on my property early this morning. A young woman has lost her life, and we are treating this as a homicide investigation. He paused, allowing the gravity of the word to settle. I want to assure the community that every resource of this department and our state partners will be dedicated to finding out what happened and bringing justice for this victim. We are working around the clock. Chief Cole, a reporter interrupted, can you tell us the victim's identity? We are withholding that information pending notification of next of kin. Is it true she was found in your employee's residence? Robert's expression didn't change. The incident occurred in a structure on my property, yes. We are investigating all aspects of the case. Are there any suspects? This is an active investigation. I cannot comment on specifics. Chief, given that this occurred on your property, will you be recusing yourself from the investigation? This was the question Elena had been waiting for. Robert's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I have the utmost confidence in Detective William Marsh of the State Police, who is leading this investigation. I will, of course, cooperate fully with his inquiry. However, as Chief of Police, I have a responsibility to this community, and I will continue to serve in that capacity, while ensuring the investigation maintains complete integrity. It was a politician's answer, yes and no at the same time. What about your housekeeper? Another reporter called. Is she a suspect? Elena's breath caught in her throat. Again, this is an active investigation, Robert said smoothly. Everyone who had access to the property is being interviewed as part of standard procedure. We're not jumping to conclusions. We're following the evidence wherever it leads. But Elena heard what he wasn't saying. The implication hanging in the air like smoke. The victim was found in the housekeeper's apartment. The housekeeper is an immigrant. The housekeeper had access. The press conference continued for another 10 minutes, but Elena stopped listening. She sat back down at the kitchen table, her hands trembling. This was how it would go, she realized. Not with accusations, not with arrests, but with silence. Strategic silence that let people draw their own conclusions. Officer Dawson cleared his throat. Ms. Ruiz, Detective Marsh needs to see you again, in the living room. Elena stood on shaky legs and followed him. Detective Marsh was waiting, along with another detective she hadn't met before, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a notepad. Ms. Ruiz, this is Detective Lisa Chen, Marsh said. She'll be assisting with the investigation. Please sit. Elena sat on the edge of the leather couch, feeling like she was sinking into it. We need to go over your statement again, Marsh said. In more detail this time. Are you comfortable answering questions without an attorney present? The question sent a chill through her. Do I need an attorney? That's your choice. You're not under arrest. You're free to leave at any time. But we do need your cooperation. Elena thought about the money she had saved. Barely $3,000. She thought about how much an attorney would cost. She thought about how refusing to cooperate would look. I'll answer your questions, she said quietly. Marsh nodded. Let's start with your employment here. How long have you worked for the Cole family? 8 months. And your duties? Cleaning the house, laundry, sometimes cooking, running errands. You live in the guest house? Yes. Rent-free? Yes. It's part of my compensation. Detective Chen spoke for the first time. Do you have family in the area, Ms. Ruiz? No, my family is in Honduras. Friends? Boyfriend? No. So you're fairly isolated here? Alone most of the time? Elena saw where this was going. I keep to myself. I work. I send money home. That's my life. Must get lonely, Chen said, her voice sympathetic. Being in a foreign country, working for a family, living in a small apartment by yourself. I'm fine. Do you ever have visitors? People from town, maybe? Someone you met at the store, the coffee shop? No. Never. Never. Marsh leaned forward. Ms. Ruiz, we found evidence that someone other than you has been in your apartment recently. Do you know anything about that? Elena's mind raced. What kind of evidence? Fingerprints, DNA, items that don't belong to you. I don't understand. What items? Marsh and Chen exchanged a look. We found a cell phone, Chen said. Hidden under your mattress. It's not registered to you. Do you know whose phone it is? Elena felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. No, I've never seen a phone under my mattress. I would have noticed. Would you? Chen's voice was still sympathetic, but there was an edge now. When's the last time you moved your mattress? Elena tried to think. When had she last cleaned under the bed? Maybe 2 weeks ago? I vacuum. I clean. But I don't move the mattress every time. So someone could have placed something there. Without your knowledge. Yes, exactly. Or, Chen said carefully, you could have placed it there yourself and forgotten about it. I didn't. I don't know anything about a phone. Marsh pulled out a photograph and slid it across the coffee table. Do you recognize this person? Elena looked at the photo. It showed a young woman with brown hair smiling at the camera. She was pretty, fresh-faced, wearing a college sweatshirt. Elena had never seen her before in her life. No, she said. I don't know her. Her name was Madison Reeves, Marsh said quietly. She was 22 years old, a student at the community college 2 towns over. She was reported missing 3 days ago. Elena's hands went to her mouth. Missing. Her roommate filed a report when Madison didn't come home from work. Her car was found abandoned at a rest stop on Route 9. Marsh's eyes never left Elena's face. The phone we found under your mattress was Madison's. The room spun. Madison Reeves, 22. Missing for 3 days. Found dead in Elena's apartment. Her phone hidden under Elena's mattress. I don't know her, Elena said desperately. I've never seen her before. I don't know how her phone got. In my apartment. I don't know why she was there. I don't know anything. Ms. Ruiz, Chen said gently, we're going to need to take your fingerprints and a DNA sample, just to rule you out. Is that all right? Elena nodded numbly. We'll also need to search your belongings, your clothes, personal items, everything in the guest house. Do we have your permission or do we need to get a warrant? You can search, Elena whispered. I have nothing to hide. But even as she said it, doubt crept in. If someone had planted a phone under her mattress, what else might they have planted? What else? Might the police find that she didn't know was there? The interviews continued for another hour. Questions about her schedule, her activities, her relationship with the Cole family. Had she ever argued with them? Had anyone ever threatened her? Did she use drugs? Did she drink? Question after question, each one chipping away at her story, looking for cracks, inconsistencies, lies. By the time they finished, Elena felt hollow. You're free to go for now, Marsh said. But don't leave town. We'll need to talk to you again. Where am I supposed to go? Elena asked. I live here. My apartment is a crime scene. Marsh looked uncomfortable. We'll arrange for you to stay at a motel for a few days. The department will cover it. How generous, Elena said, and immediately regretted the bitterness in her voice. Marsh studied her for a long moment. Ms. Ruiz, I want you to understand something. I don't know what happened here, but I'm going to find out. And if you had nothing to do with it, if you're telling the truth, then I will prove that. But if you're lying to me about anything, I will find that out too. I'm not lying. Then you have nothing to worry about. But Elena knew that wasn't true. In her experience, people like her always had something to worry about. After the detectives left, Elena sat alone in the living room. Outside, she could hear the murmur of investigators, the click of cameras, the hum of activity. Catherine appeared in the doorway, looking like a ghost. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair uncombed, still in her bathrobe even though it was nearly noon. Elena, she said softly, are you all right? The question was so absurd, that Elena almost laughed. "No, Mrs. Cole, I'm not all right." Catherine moved into the room, sitting in the chair across from Elena. "I don't understand what's happening. Robert says, he says they found a girl in your apartment, dead. That's what they tell me. Did you know her?" Elena looked at Catherine, really looked at her, saw the fear there, the confusion, but also something else. Calculation, maybe, or suspicion. "No," Elena said firmly. "I never saw her before." "Then why was she in your apartment?" "I don't know." Catherine twisted her hands together. "The police asked me questions about you, about whether you'd seemed strange lately, whether you'd had visitors, whether—" She stopped, unable to finish. "Whether I'm a murderer?" Elena said flatly. "No, no, of course not. I told them you're a good person, a hard worker, that you've been nothing but reliable and trustworthy." Catherine's voice broke. "But Elena, they found her in your apartment. How did she get there?" "I don't know, Mrs. Cole. I was asleep. I didn't hear anything. I don't know how she got there or who brought her there or—" Elena stopped, a terrible thought occurring to her. Catherine noticed. "What? What is it?" "The keys," Elena said slowly. "You have a key to my apartment, you and Chief Cole." Catherine's face went pale. "You think one of us—" "I don't know what to think, but someone got into my apartment without me knowing. Someone who had a key. Robert would never—" Catherine stopped herself. The silence that followed was deafening. "Where is Garrett?" Elena asked. Suddenly. "What? Garrett? Where is he? I haven't seen him all morning." Catherine stood abruptly. "He's at school. Robert sent him to school. He said it was better for Garrett to maintain his normal routine, that there was no reason for him to be here. A girl was murdered on your property and—" "Your son is at school." "Robert thought it was best," Catherine said, but her voice wavered. He said we needed to protect Garrett from this, keep him away from the media, the questions. Or keep him away from the investigators," Elena thought, but didn't say. The front door opened and Robert entered with the district attorney. They were deep in conversation, their voices low and urgent. "Contain it before. Media narrative is crucial. Absolutely cannot allow." They stopped when they saw Catherine and Elena in the living room. "Catherine," Robert said, his voice shifting to that gentle tone he used for his wife. "You should rest. This has been traumatic for everyone." "I want to know what's happening," Catherine said. "In my own house, I deserve to know." "And you will. But right now, the investigation is ongoing. The best thing you can do is stay calm and let the professionals handle this." He said it kindly, but Elena heard the command underneath. "Be quiet. Don't ask questions. Let me control this." Catherine heard it too. She stood there for a moment, swaying slightly, then turned and walked toward the stairs without another word. Robert watched her go, then turned his attention to Elena. "Ms. Ruiz, I want you to know that I've arranged accommodations for you at the Millbrook Inn. Officer Dawson will drive you there. You should pack a bag, essentials only. Your apartment is still being processed, so you won't have access to most of your things. For a while." "How long is a while?" Elena asked. "However long it takes." The district attorney stepped forward. "Ms. Ruiz, I'm Sarah Pemberton. I want to assure you that we're doing everything we can to get to the bottom of this tragedy. I know this must be very difficult for you." Her words were sympathetic, but her eyes were cold, assessing. "A young woman is dead," Elena said. "Yes, it's difficult, of course, and we will find out who's responsible. I can promise you that." The way she said it made Elena's blood run cold, because she realized in that moment that they'd already decided who was responsible. They were just building the case now. Elena stood. "I'd like to pack my bag." "Officer Dawson will accompany you," Robert said. "For your safety. For her safety. Or to make sure she didn't take anything incriminating." Elena walked out of the house she'd called home for 8 months, escorted like a criminal, while behind her the chief of police and the district attorney began their careful work of shaping the narrative, of controlling the story before the truth could interfere, of ensuring that when someone was blamed for Madison Reeves' death, it would be the right someone, or at least the convenient someone. And Elena, standing in her small apartment surrounded by crime scene tape and evidence markers, finally understood the full weight of her situation. She was invisible when they needed her to be. But now she was all too visible. Now she was the perfect suspect. An immigrant living alone, no family, no connections, no one who would fight for her. She was exactly the kind of person who could take the fall for a crime. And unless something changed, unless someone started asking the right questions instead of the easy ones, that's exactly what would happen. The Millbrook Inn was the kind of place where people stayed when they were passing through, not when they were planning to stay. 2 stories, faded blue paint, a blinking neon sign that buzzed with electrical problems. The room they gave Elena smelled like old cigarettes poorly masked by industrial air freshener. Officer Dawson helped her carry in the single duffel bag she'd been allowed to pack, 2 changes of clothes, toiletries, her phone charger. Everything else was evidence now. "There's a diner across the street," Dawson said, lingering in the doorway. He seemed uncomfortable, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. "Food's decent." "Thank you," Elena said quietly. "Listen, Ms. Ruiz." He trailed off, then tried again. "The chief, he's a good man. Whatever happened, he'll make sure it gets sorted out properly." Elena didn't respond. What could she say? After Dawson left, she sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Not the quiet tears she'd been holding back all day, but deep, shaking sobs that left her gasping for air. A girl was dead. A girl she'd never met, whose name she hadn't known until today, whose face she'd only seen in a police photograph. Madison Reeves, 22 years old, someone's daughter, someone's friend, dead in Elena's apartment while Elena slept 10 feet away. How was that possible? Elena pulled out her phone with trembling hands and dialed her mother's number in Honduras. It rang 4 times. Before the familiar voice answered, "Elena? Mija, is everything all right?" Just hearing her mother's voice made the tears come faster. "Mama, something happened. Something terrible." She told her mother everything, the police, the body, the questions, the suspicion. As she spoke, she heard her mother's breathing change, heard the fear creeping in. "You need to come home," her mother said when Elena finished. "Right now. Get on a plane and come home." "I can't. They told me not to leave town. And Mama, even if I could, I don't have money for a plane ticket. I have maybe $3,000 saved. We'll figure it out. We'll borrow." "From who?" Elena's voice broke. "Who do we know who has that kind of money? And even if I left, what then? I'd look guilty. They'd say I was running." Silence on the other end of the line. "Elena, listen to me carefully," her mother said finally, her voice steel. "You are a good girl. You work hard. You send money home so your sister can stay in school. You have done nothing wrong. Do you understand me? Nothing. But they think. I don't care what they think. You know the truth. God knows the truth. That's what matters." Elena wished she could believe that, but she'd lived in this country long enough to know that truth and justice didn't always align the way they should. They talked for another 20 minutes, her mother's voice a lifeline, before Elena's prepaid phone minutes ran low, and they had to say goodbye. After hanging up, Elena lay on the cheap motel bed staring at the water-stained ceiling and thought about patterns. The phone under her mattress, Madison's phone. How long had it been there? Detective Marsh said they'd found other evidence too. DNA. Fingerprints that weren't Elena's. But whose? She thought about the Cole house, about who had access to her apartment. Catherine had a key, Robert had a key, and Garrett. Garrett could have taken his parents' keys any time he wanted. But why would any of them put a dead girl in her apartment? It made no sense. Unless they were trying to hide something. Unless Madison Reeves's death was connected to the Cole family, in a way Elena didn't understand yet. Elena sat up, her mind racing. She grabbed her phone and did something she should have done hours ago. She Googled Madison Reeves. The search results loaded slowly on the motel's weak Wi-Fi. When they finally appeared, Elena's breath caught. The top result was a news article from 3 days ago. Local woman reported missing. Elena clicked on it. Madison Reeves, 22, was reported missing by her roommate on Saturday evening. Reeves, a student at Millbrook Community College, was last seen leaving her shift at Riverside Diner on Route 9. Her car was found abandoned at a rest stop approximately 15 miles from her workplace. Police are asking anyone with information to come forward. Below the text was a photo, the same one Detective Marsh had shown Elena. Madison smiling, full of life, wearing that college sweatshirt. Elena scrolled down looking for more information. Another article from 2 days ago. Search continues for missing student. And then today's headlines. Breaking just hours ago. Body of missing woman found at police chief's residence. Millbrook Falls rocked by. Homicide investigation. Sources. Victim found in housekeeper's apartment. Elena's stomach turned as she read the articles. Already the narrative was being shaped. The headlines didn't say immigrant housekeeper explicitly, but the implication was there in every paragraph. The chief's longtime housekeeper, whose name is being withheld, is cooperating with investigators. Long-time housekeeper. 8 months was hardly long time, but it sounded more damning than recently hired. Sources close to the investigation say the victim's phone was recovered from the residence. Not the guest house. Not the property. The residence. As if Elena's apartment and the main house were the same thing. Elena kept reading, clicking through article after article, until she found something that made her pause. A comment section on a local news site. I go to school with Madison. She was the sweetest person. Whoever did this should rot in prison. Why isn't the chief's housekeeper in custody? If they found the body in her apartment, seems pretty obvious. Innocent until proven guilty, people. We don't know what happened. The housekeeper isn't illegal. Probably brought the victim. There for human trafficking or something. These people. Elena's hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. These people. She forced herself to keep reading, even though every comment felt like a knife. I heard Madison was working at the diner to pay for school. Such a tragedy. Her poor family. Does anyone know if there's a connection between Madison and the Cole family? Why would there be a connection? The crime happened at the housekeeper's place, not the main house. Elena's eyes caught on that last comment and the reply below it. But the housekeeper lives on their property, and Madison's car was found on Route 9, which is literally the road you take from the college to Birch Lane. Maybe she knew someone in that house? Stop spreading conspiracy theories. The police know what they're doing. Elena set her phone down, her mind spinning. Route 9. She knew that. She'd driven it dozens of times running errands for Catherine. It was the most direct route between the community college and Millbrook Falls, between the college and Birch Lane, between Madison Reeves's last known location and the place where she died. Elena grabbed her phone again and pulled a map. She traced the route with her finger. 15 miles from the college to the rest stop where Madison's car was found. Another 8 miles from the rest stop to Birch Lane. Madison had been driving toward Millbrook Falls when something happened. When someone stopped her. When a knock on the motel room door made Elena jump so violently she nearly fell off the bed. Ms. Ruiz, it's Detective Marsh. I need to speak with you. Elena's heart raced as she opened the door. Marsh stood there alone. No other officers, no official vehicle visible in the parking lot. He wore jeans and a casual jacket instead of his suit. He looked tired. I'm sorry to bother you so late, he said. May I come in? Elena hesitated, then stepped aside. Marsh entered the small room, glancing around at the worn furniture, the flickering TV, the general sadness of the place. I wanted to check on you. He said, make sure you're all right. Why? The question came out sharper than Elena intended. Why would you care if I'm all right? Marsh was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out the desk chair and sat down, gesturing for Elena to sit on the bed. Ms. Ruiz, I need to be straight with you. I've been in law enforcement for 26 years. I've worked homicides in 3 different states, and I've learned that the obvious answer isn't always the right answer. Elena's pulse quickened. What are you saying? I'm saying that yes, Madison Reeves was found in your apartment. Yes, her phone was. Under your mattress. Yes, you had access and opportunity. He leaned forward. But I've also been doing this job long enough to know when something doesn't feel right. What doesn't feel right? Everything. Marsh pulled out a small notebook. Let me ask you something. In the 8 months you've worked for the Cole family, have you ever seen them with Madison Reeves? Ever heard them mention her name? No, never. Have you ever been to Riverside Diner where Madison worked? Elena thought back. Once, maybe 6 weeks ago, Mrs. Cole asked me to pick up a takeout order. Did you see Madison? There? I don't know. I didn't know what she looked like then. There were waitresses, but I didn't pay attention to them. Marsh made a note. Did Catherine Cole go to that diner regularly? I don't think so. That was the only time she sent me there. What about Garrett Cole? Did he ever mention the diner? Elena's breath caught. I don't know. He doesn't talk to me much. But if you had to guess, does a 17-year-old boy who drives his own Jeep and has money to burn? Does that sound like someone who might grab food at a local diner? Elena thought about Garrett, his late nights, his secrecy, the way he climbed out his window when he thought no one was watching. Maybe, she said slowly. Yes, maybe. Marsh nodded, as if she'd confirmed something he'd already suspected. Detective Marsh, Elena said carefully, why are you here? Why are you asking me these questions in a motel room instead of at the police station? Marsh looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he made a decision. Because Chief Robert Cole is one of the most powerful men in this county. Because he has friends in the DA's office, in the mayor's office, in every office that matters. And because when I started asking questions about his family's possible connection to Madison Reeves, I was politely but firmly told to focus my investigation elsewhere. Elena's mouth went dry. On me. On the evidence that's right in front of us, Marsh said carefully. On the straightforward explanation. The victim was found in your apartment, therefore you must be involved. But you don't believe that. I believe in following evidence wherever it leads. And right now, the evidence is leading me places that some people don't want me to look. He pulled out his phone and showed Elena a photograph. It was a screenshot from what looked like a social media post. The photo showed a group of young people at what looked like a party. Madison Reeves was in the center, smiling, a red cup in her hand. And standing next to her, his arm around her shoulders, was a boy with red hair and freckles. Garrett Cole. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. This was posted 6 weeks ago, Marsh said quietly. I found it on Madison's roommate's Instagram. The roommate didn't even realize the significance until I showed her Garrett's photo from the school yearbook. 6 weeks ago. Elena whispered, that's when Mrs. Cole sent me to the diner. Exactly when Madison started working there. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture Elena desperately didn't want to see. You think Garrett knew her, she said. I think it's possible, more than possible. Marsh put his phone away. But here's the problem. I can't get a warrant to search Garrett's room. I can't compel him to give a formal statement. I can't do any of the things I would normally do in an investigation because every time I try I get shut down. By who? By people who think the case is already solved. By people who would rather believe a convenient narrative than ask uncomfortable questions about the chief of police's son. Elena felt cold all over. So what happens now? They just They just decide I did this? They arrest me for something I didn't do? Not if I can help it. Marsh stood. Ms. Ruiz, I need you to trust me. I know that's asking a lot given your situation. But I promise you, I am going to find out what really happened to Madison Reeves. And if you're innocent, which I believe you are, then I will prove it. How? By doing my job, by following the evidence, by asking the questions no one else wants to ask. He moved toward the door, then paused. But I need you to do something for me. What? Stay available. Don't talk to reporters. Don't post on social media. And if anyone, and I mean anyone, approaches you about this case, you tell me immediately. Can you do that? Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. After Marsh left, Elena sat in the dark motel room, her mind reeling. Garrett had known Madison. They'd been at a party together. And then Madison had ended up dead in Elena's apartment, her phone hidden under Elena's mattress. Why? What had happened between that photo 6 weeks ago and Madison's death? And why had someone gone to such elaborate lengths to make it look like Elena was involved? Elena thought about the patterns she'd observed in the Cole household, the control, the manipulation, the way Robert orchestrated everything, the way Garrett was slowly breaking under the pressure, the way Catherine medicated herself into numbness. Somewhere in that toxic dynamic, Madison Reeves had become a problem, and someone had solved that problem by putting her body where it would cast suspicion on the most convenient, most vulnerable, most disposable person in the house, the invisible woman, the immigrant with no family, no connections, no power, Elena. But Detective Marsh had seen through it. He was asking the right questions. He was looking in the right places. For the first time since this nightmare began, Elena felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't alone anymore. Someone was fighting for the truth, even if that truth was more terrible than anyone wanted to believe. The next morning, Elena woke to her phone buzzing incessantly. Text messages, missed calls, voicemails piling up. She grabbed the phone, heart racing, expecting the worst. But it wasn't the police. It was reporters. Ms. Ruiz, this is Jennifer Parks from Channel 7 News. I'd like to speak with you about the Madison Reeves case. We're prepared to offer Elena, Brad Morrison, Millbrook Gazette. I'm writing a feature story and I think it's important that your side gets heard. Can we talk? This is Amanda Chen from State News Network. We'd like to offer you an exclusive interview. Delete, delete, delete. Elena remembered Marsh's warning. Don't talk to reporters. But how had they gotten her number? She was scrolling through the messages when a new one appeared. Unknown number. Elena, this is Catherine Cole. Please call me. It's important. Elena stared at the message for a long moment before calling back. Catherine answered on the first ring. Elena, thank God. I need to talk to you. Can you meet me somewhere? Not here. Somewhere private. I don't think that's a good idea, Mrs. Cole. Please, I need to explain something about Garrett. Elena's grip tightened on the phone. What about Garrett? Not over the phone. There's a coffee shop on Main Street, the Brew House. Can you meet me there in an hour? Every instinct told Elena this was a mistake, but she needed answers. 1 hour, she said. The Brew House was nearly empty at 9 in the morning on a Wednesday. Catherine sat in a back corner booth, wearing dark sunglasses and a scarf despite being indoors. She looked like someone trying not to be recognized. Elena slid into the seat across from her. Catherine's hands shook as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. Up close, she looked even worse than she had yesterday. Makeup unable to hide the dark circles, her skin sallow, her movements jittery. Thank you for coming, Catherine said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. You said this was about Garrett. Catherine glanced around nervously, then leaned forward. The police questioned him yesterday, after school. They brought him to the station. Elena's stomach dropped. What did he say? That's just it. Robert wouldn't let me be there. He brought Martin Voss, that attorney, and they went into the interview room together. I waited for 2 hours, and when they came out, Robert just said everything was fine. Garrett had been cleared. It was handled. Cleared of what? I don't know. Catherine's voice rose. Then she caught herself, lowering it to a harsh whisper. No one will tell me anything. Robert treats me like I'm a child who can't handle the truth. But Elena, I'm not stupid. Something happened. Something involving Garrett and that girl. Elena thought about the photo Marsh had shown her. Did you know Garrett knew Madison Reeves? Catherine's face went white. How did you? She stopped herself. So it's true. They did know each other. There's a photograph of them together at a party 6 weeks ago. Catherine closed her eyes. Oh, God. Mrs. Cole, what do you know? About 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months, too. Garrett started acting different, more secretive than usual, sneaking out more often. And there were phone calls. Late at night, he'd be in his room talking to someone. I asked him about it once, and She trailed off. What did he say? He told me to mind my own business, then Robert heard us arguing, and he backed Garrett up. Said I needed to give him privacy, stop hovering, stop being overprotective. Catherine's voice cracked. So I did. I stopped asking questions, and now... She pulled out her phone and showed Elena a screenshot. It was a text message exchange. Unknown number, we need to talk, Garrett. Already told you no unknown. Please, I need to see you, Garrett. Stop texting me unknown. Garrett, please, it's important, Garrett. I said stop. Delete my number. When were these sent? Elena asked. 2 weeks ago. I found them when I was doing laundry and his phone fell out of his pocket. I know I shouldn't have looked, but I was worried about him. Did you see who the other number belonged to? I tried calling it. It's disconnected now. But Elena, the timing. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. 2 weeks ago. And then Madison goes missing 3 days ago, and now she's dead, and... Mrs. Cole, did you tell the police about these messages? Catherine's silence was answer enough. You have to tell them, Elena said urgently. This is evidence. I can't. Catherine's voice was barely a whisper. Robert would never forgive me, and what if it means something terrible? What if Garrett... She couldn't finish the sentence. Elena leaned back, trying to process this. Why are you telling me? Because I need to know I'm not crazy. I need someone else to see this and tell me whether I'm making something out of nothing or whether... She swallowed. Or whether my son is in serious trouble. Before Elena could respond, her own phone buzzed. Detective Marsh, need to see you. Important development. Can you come to the station? Elena showed Catherine the message. Catherine went even paler. Don't tell them about the texts. Not yet. Please. Elena, just give me time to figure out what to do. I can't withhold evidence. It's not evidence, it's just messages that could mean anything. Teenage drama, maybe a girlfriend. We don't know. We do know, Elena said firmly. We know a girl is dead. We know your son knew her. We know he was telling someone to stop contacting him. Mrs. Cole, this matters. Catherine grabbed Elena's hand across the table. Please, just 24 hours. Let me talk to Robert first. Let me figure out how to handle this without destroying my family. Elena pulled her hand back. A girl is dead. Your family isn't my priority. She stood and walked out of the coffee shop, Catherine's sobs following her. The police station was a modern building on the edge of downtown, all glass and concrete. Elena had never been inside before. Detective Marsh met her in the lobby and led her to a small conference room. Thank you for coming so quickly, he said, closing the door. We've had some developments. Detective Chen was there too, along with another man Elena didn't recognize, older in an expensive suit. This is District Attorney Pemberton's deputy, Michael Torres, Marsh said. He'll be sitting in on this interview. Elena's unease grew. Am I a suspect? Everyone's a suspect until they're not, Torres said smoothly. But we're hoping you can help us clarify some timeline issues. Marsh pulled out a folder. Ms. Ruiz, you told us you went to sleep around 10 p.m. the night Madison died. Is that correct? Yes. And you heard nothing unusual? No sounds, no voices, nothing? I heard a door close. Around midnight, I think. I told you that already. Right. Marsh pulled out a photograph. Do you recognize this? It was a photo of tire tracks in mud. No. Should I? These tracks were found near the guest house, fresh from the night of the murder. They matched the tires on Garrett Cole's Jeep. Elena's heart began to pound. We also found something else, Chen said, sliding another photo across the table. This was in the bushes about 20 feet from your apartment. The photo showed a piece of torn fabric. Dark blue, looked like denim. We tested it for DNA, Chen continued. It came back as a match for Madison Reeves. I don't understand, Elena said. What does this mean? It means Madison was outside your apartment before she was inside it, Marsh said. It means, there was some kind of struggle. It means this wasn't a clean, simple murder. Someone brought her there, things went wrong, got messy. Torres leaned forward. Ms. Ruiz, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. Did Garrett Cole ask you to help him with anything that night? Did he come to your apartment? No. Did he ever give you anything to hold for him? Hide for him? No. Did he ever threaten you? Tell you to keep quiet about something? No, Elena's voice rose. I already told you I don't know anything about that night. I was asleep. Torres sat back, exchanging a look with the detectives. The problem, Ms. Ruiz, he said carefully, is that we have physical evidence placing Garrett Cole's vehicle near your apartment around the time of the murder. We have text messages suggesting a relationship between Garrett and Madison. But we don't have Garrett. What do you mean you don't have him? He's lawyered up, Chen said bluntly. Martin Voss won't let us anywhere near him without a formal arrest, and the DA won't authorize an arrest without more concrete evidence. Because he's the chief's son, Elena said, bitterly. No one contradicted her. Marsh pulled out another document. Ms. Ruiz, I need to ask you about something we found in our search of your apartment. We recovered a piece of paper from your trash can. A note, in handwriting that doesn't match yours. He showed her a photocopy. The note was, written in hurried scrawl, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen, please don't tell. Elena stared at it, her blood running cold. I've never seen this before. It wasn't in your handwriting? No. Do you recognize the handwriting? Elena studied it carefully. It looked young, desperate. No, but if I had to guess, it looks like a teenager wrote it. That's what our expert said too. Marsh took the photocopy back. Ms. Ruiz, here's what I think happened. I think Garrett Cole and Madison Reeves knew each other. I think something happened between them. Maybe a relationship that went bad. Maybe she was pregnant, maybe she knew something she shouldn't. I think Garrett panicked. And I think he used your apartment because it was convenient, because you were invisible, because framing you was easier than facing consequences himself. Then arrest him, Elena said. We can't, Torres said flatly. Not yet. The evidence is circumstantial. A good defense attorney, and Voss is the best, would tear it apart. We need more. We need someone to break. We need someone to tell the truth. He looked meaningfully at Elena. She understood what he was really saying. They needed her to testify against Garrett. But to do that, they needed her to have witnessed something, or to claim she had. I can't tell you what I don't know, Elena said carefully. Are you sure? Torres leaned forward. Because right now, you're our best witness. You lived there. You had access, you know the family. If you remembered something, anything that could help us build a case against Garrett Cole. You want me to lie. I want you to search your memory, Torres corrected smoothly. Sometimes traumatic events block our recollection. Sometimes, with time and reflection, details come back. Elena looked at Marsh. He was staring at the table, his jaw tight. He didn't like this either, but he wasn't stopping it. I need to think, Elena said quietly. Of course, Torres said. Take your time, but not too much time. The longer this drags out, the more the story shifts. Right now, public sympathy is with Madison. But in a few days, if we don't have answers, that sympathy turns to anger. And that anger needs a target. The threat was clear. If Elena didn't help them build a case against Garrett, she would remain the most convenient target. After they let her go, Elena sat in the parking lot, her hands shaking on the steering wheel of the cab she'd taken there. Her phone buzzed. Catherine again. Did you tell them? Elena stared at the message. She thought about the texts Catherine had shown her. She thought about the tire tracks. She thought about the note in the trash. She thought about a 17-year-old boy whose father had taught him that rules didn't apply to people like them. And she thought about Madison Reeves, whose only crime was getting involved with the wrong person. Elena typed a response. Meet me. Same place. 1 hour. Bring the phone. With those messages. She hit send before she could change her mind, because Detective Marsh was right about one thing. Someone needed to tell the truth, even if that truth destroyed a family, even if it meant making herself a bigger target. Someone owed Madison Reeves the truth, and Elena was starting to realize that someone might have to be her. Catherine was already at the coffee shop when Elena arrived, her face blotchy from crying. She'd brought the phone, but her hands trembled so badly she could barely hold it. I can't do this, Catherine whispered as Elena sat down. I can't. Betray my own son. You're not betraying him, Elena said quietly. You're trying to find out the truth. There's a difference. Catherine shook her head. You don't understand. If Robert finds out I'm talking to you, showing you these messages. She trailed off, but the fear in her eyes said, everything. Mrs. Cole, is your husband violent? The question hung in the air between them. No, Catherine said finally. He's never hit me, never hit Garrett. But he doesn't have to. He controls everything else. The money, the house, what people think of us if I go against him. She looked down at her hands. I don't know who I'd be without him. I've been Mrs. Robert Cole for so long, I don't remember being just Catherine. Elena felt a pang of sympathy, but pushed it aside. The phone. Can I see it? Catherine slid it across the table like it was something dangerous. Elena scrolled. Through the messages again, this time looking for details she'd missed. The text started about 7 weeks ago, casual at first, almost flirty. Madison. Had fun last night, Garrett. Me too. Madison. When can I see you again? Garrett. I'll let you know. Then they got more frequent, more intense. Madison. I miss you, Garrett. Busy with school stuff, Madison. You're always busy. Are you avoiding me? Garrett. No, just a lot going on. Then, about 3 weeks ago, the tone shifted. Madison. We need to talk. It's important, Garrett. Can it wait? Madison. No, it can't wait. Please, Garrett. This is serious, Garrett. Fine. Where? Madison. Riverside Diner. After my shift. 10 p.m. Elena's pulse quickened. Did he go? To meet her? I don't know, Catherine said miserably. That was a Thursday night. Robert was working late. I took one of my pills and went to bed early. Garrett could have gone out. And I wouldn't have known. Elena kept scrolling. The messages after that meeting were different, colder. Madison. You can't just pretend this isn't happening, Garrett. I told you I need time to think, Madison. We don't have time. I need to decide what to do, Garrett. That's your choice, Madison. It's our choice. This affects both of us, Garrett. I can't help you, Madison. You mean you won't. And then the messages Elena had seen before. Garrett telling Madison to stop contacting him, to delete his number. The last message from Madison was sent 4 days ago. The day before she went missing. I'm going away, Garrett. We need to talk face to face. I'll come to you if I have to. There was no response from Garrett. Elena looked up at Catherine. She was pregnant. Catherine's face crumpled. Oh, God. You really think this affects both of us? I need to decide what to do. Mrs. Cole, what else? What could it be? Catherine put her head in her hands. This can't be happening. This can't be real. Did you notice anything different about Garrett 4 days ago? The day Madison sent that last message? Catherine thought for a moment. He came home late that night. After midnight, I heard him come in. Did you ask him where he'd been? No, Robert says I need to give him space. Her voice was bitter. I'm so tired of giving everyone space, of pretending everything's fine when it's not fine, when it hasn't been fine for years. Elena took a photo of the phone screen with her own phone, making sure to capture the messages and timestamps. What are you doing? Catherine asked, alarmed. Evidence. Detective Marsh needs to see this. No! Catherine grabbed for the phone, but Elena pulled it back. Please, Elena. Not yet. Let me talk to Garrett first. Let me hear his side. His side? Mrs. Cole, a girl is dead. Your son was involved with her. She told him she needed to talk face to face, and then she disappeared and ended up dead in my apartment. What side could possibly make that okay? Catherine's face hardened. You don't know my son. You don't know what he's capable of. I know. He wrote in his notebook about wanting his family gone. I know he sneaks out at night. I know he drinks and lies and... You read his notebook? Catherine's voice went cold. You went through his private things. It fell open when I was cleaning his room. I didn't mean to, but I saw it. And Mrs. Cole, what I saw scared me. That's just teenage angst. Garrett would never actually hurt anyone. He's a good boy, he's just confused, under pressure. He told Madison Reeves to stop contacting him. She said she was coming to see him anyway, and then she ended up dead. Elena leaned forward. You can make excuses for him, or you can face the truth. But you don't get to do both. Catherine stared at her for a long moment. Then something in her expression shifted. A door closing, a wall going up. You're right, she said quietly. I can't do both. She stood, grabbed her phone from the table, and walked out. Elena sat alone in the coffee shop, her heart sinking. She'd pushed too hard, backed Catherine into a corner, and now Catherine would go home, probably delete those messages, and Elena would have nothing but her word about what she'd seen. Her phone buzzed. Detective Marsh. Need to talk. Now. Where are you? Elena told him. He arrived 10 minutes later, his expression grim. Catherine Cole just called her husband, he said without preamble. Told him you've been harassing her, trying to get her to lie about Garrett. Chief Cole is furious. He's talking about filing a restraining order. Elena's stomach dropped. I wasn't harassing her. She contacted me. She wanted to show me something. Show you what? Elena pulled out her phone and showed him the photos she'd taken of the text messages. Marsh's eyes widened as he read. Where did you get these? Catherine showed me. On Garrett's phone. She still has the phone? She took it with her when she left. Marsh swore under his breath. She'll delete them now. You know that, right? Or claim you doctored these photos. Your word against hers, and she's the chief's wife. So what do I do? Marsh was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he made a decision. Give me those photos. I'll see if I can use them to get a warrant for Garrett's phone records. If these messages are real, and I believe they are, then the phone company will have copies. And if they don't, then we keep digging, we find another way. He looked at Elena seriously. But you need to be careful now. Robert Cole is powerful, and you just became a threat to his son. That makes you dangerous to him. I didn't do anything wrong. Doesn't matter. In his mind, you're the problem. The outsider causing trouble for his family. Marsh stood. Stay at the motel. Don't go anywhere alone. And Elena, don't trust anyone from that family. Not Catherine, not Robert, and especially not Garrett. Whatever masks they wear in public, you've seen what's underneath now. After Marsh left, Elena sat in the coffee shop for a long time, watching people come and go. Normal people living normal lives, ordering coffee and chatting with friends. She wondered what it felt like to be normal. To not be afraid. To not be caught in the middle of something so much bigger than herself. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You should have minded your own business. Lena's blood ran cold. Another message. People who cause problems for my family tend to regret it. And then, ask Madison Reeves. Oh, wait. You can't. Elena's hands shook so badly she dropped the phone. When she picked it up, there was one final message. Delete those photos. Forget what you saw, or you'll be next. Elena showed the threatening texts to Detective Marsh immediately. He traced the number, a burner phone, purchased with cash at a convenience store in the next town over, impossible to track. Could be Garrett, Marsh said, examining the messages. Could be someone acting on his behalf. Either way, we're filing a formal complaint and getting you protection. Protection? Elena's voice cracked. What kind of protection? An officer will check on you regularly. We'll monitor your motel room. And Elena, he looked at her seriously, I want you to consider going somewhere. Else. Out of town, stay with friends, family, anywhere but here. I don't have anywhere to go, and if I leave, doesn't that make me look guilty? Marsh didn't have an answer for that. What he did have was news about the phone records. 2 days later, he met Elena at a diner outside of town, a folder in his hands and an expression that was equal parts triumph and disgust. We got the warrant, he said, sliding into the booth across from her. Garrett Cole's phone records for the past 3 months. And you were right about everything. He opened the folder, showing her highlighted sections of call logs and text records. Garrett and Madison had been in constant contact for 6 weeks. Calls, texts, everything. Then 3 weeks ago, the communication shifted, became more sporadic, and 4 days before Madison disappeared, there was one final exchange. Elena leaned forward, reading the timestamp. The night Madison had sent that last message about coming to see him. But here's what's interesting, Marsh continued. That same night, there's a record of a substantial cash withdrawal from Catherine Cole's bank account. $5,000. Elena's eyes widened. 5,000? From an ATM in downtown Millbrook Falls at 11:47 p.m. Marsh pulled out another document. And the next day, Madison Reeves deposited exactly $5,000 into her checking account. The pieces clicked into place in Elena's mind. They tried to pay her off. That's what it looks like. Madison needed money, probably for medical care related to the pregnancy. The Coles gave it to her, hoping she'd disappear. But she didn't. No. 3 days later, she's reported missing. And 3 days after that, she's dead in your apartment. Marsh closed the folder. Elena, I need to show you something else. Something that's going to be hard to hear. He pulled out his phone and showed her a bank statement. Catherine Cole's personal account. Over the past 6 months, there had been regular withdrawals. Hundreds of dollars at a time, sometimes thousands. Cash. Withdrawals, untraceable. Where was this money going? Elena asked. That's what we need to find out, but look at the pattern. The withdrawals increase in frequency about 2 months ago, right around when Garrett and Madison started their relationship. Marsh scrolled through more records, and they spiked dramatically in the weeks before Madison's death. Elena studied the numbers, her mind working. Someone was bleeding them dry. Or they were paying for something, repeatedly. Like what? Marsh leaned back, his expression dark. Like keeping secrets quiet. Like making problems disappear. Like buying silence from people who knew too much. Elena thought about Catherine's trembling hands, her fear, her desperation. She knew, Elena whispered. Catherine knew what was happening, and she was trying to fix it with money. Money only fixes problems until it doesn't, Marsh said. And eventually, Madison Reeves became a problem that money couldn't fix. So they killed her. Marsh didn't confirm or deny. What I can tell you is that we're building a case. We have the phone records. We have the financial trail. We have physical evidence placing Garrett at the scene. What we need now is someone to break. Someone to tell us what really happened that night. You mean Garrett? Or Catherine? Or even Robert, if he knew about any of this? Marsh looked at her carefully. The money trail shows Robert's accounts, too. There are transfers between his account and Catherine's. Large, Sums moved around trying to hide the paper trail, but we found it. He was helping her cover it up. Or he was orchestrating it. Marsh's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. I have to go. The chief wants to see me. Be careful, Elena said. I will. You too. While Detective Marsh continued his investigation, Elena found herself thinking more and more about Madison Reeves, not as a body in her apartment, not as evidence in a case, but as a person, a 22-year-old girl with dreams and fears who'd made the mistake of getting involved with the wrong boy. Elena started researching. Late at night in her motel room, she searched for everything she could find about Madison's life. There wasn't much. Madison hadn't been the type to post constantly on social media. Her Instagram was sparse, occasional photos of sunsets, coffee cups, her cat. But what? Little was there painted a picture of someone quiet, thoughtful, kind. Then Elena found Madison's roommate, Jessica Chen, who'd posted a tribute after Madison's death. Maddie was the best person I knew. She worked 2 jobs to put herself through school because her parents couldn't afford to help. She wanted to be a teacher. She loved kids. She volunteered at the youth center every Saturday. She deserved so much better than this. Below the post were dozens of comments from people who'd known Madison, friends, classmates, co-workers. She helped me pass chemistry, stayed up all night tutoring me before the final. She always remembered my coffee order. Small thing, but it meant a lot. Maddie was saving up to bring her little brother to visit. She talked about him all the time. Elena read every comment, tears streaming down her face. This was who had died. Not just a victim, but a person. A good person. The next day, Elena did something she probably shouldn't have done. She went to Madison's memorial service. It was held at a small church on the edge of town. Elena sat in the back, trying to be invisible, watching as Madison's family and friends gathered to say goodbye. Madison's mother spoke first, a tiny woman with Madison's eyes crying so hard she could barely get the words out. My baby girl just wanted to make something of herself. She was the first in our family to go to college. She worked so hard. She was so proud. Her voice broke completely. She called. Me every Sunday. Every single Sunday. What am I going to do now without those calls? Elena had to leave. She couldn't breathe. Outside, she leaned against the church wall, gasping for air, trying not to sob. You knew her? Elena turned. A young woman stood there, early 20s, black hair, tired. She's Jessica, Madison's roommate. No, Elena admitted. I'm the person they found her with in the apartment. Jessica's eyes widened. You're Elena Ruiz? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come. I needed to see that she was real. Jessica finished quietly. That she mattered. Yes? They stood in silence for a moment. Did you know my son was involved with her? Elena asked carefully. Jessica frowned. Your son? No, I meant... Elena shook her head. I'm sorry. I'm not explaining this well. I worked for the family. The boy she was seeing, Garrett Cole. Recognition flashed across Jessica's face. The police chief's son. Yeah, Maddie told me about him. She was scared of him at the end. Elena's heart stopped. Scared? Why? Jessica glanced back at the church, then made a decision. Let's walk. They moved away from the building toward a small park. Across the street, Maddie met Garrett at a party about 2 months ago, Jessica said. She thought he was cute, charming. He was really into her at first, texting all the time, showing up at the diner where she worked. It seemed sweet, but it wasn't. It got intense really fast. He wanted to know where she was all the time. Got jealous if she talked to other guys. Started showing up unannounced. Maddie thought it was romantic at first, but then... Jessica paused. Then she got pregnant. What happened when she told him? He freaked out. Told her to get rid of it. Offered her money. But Maddie wasn't sure what she wanted to do. She needed time to think. And Garrett didn't like that. He got mean. Started threatening her. Said his father was the police chief, that no one would believe her if she tried to cause trouble. Said they'd make her disappear if she didn't do what he wanted. Elena felt sick. Did she tell anyone? File a report? She was scared, and honestly, who would have believed her? The police chief's perfect son, or some waitress from the wrong side of town? Jessica's voice was bitter. She was going to go to a women's clinic. They helped girls in her situation. But she wanted to talk to Garrett one more time first, face to face. She thought maybe if he saw her, really looked at her, he'd understand. So she went to see him. 4 days before she disappeared, she borrowed my car because hers was acting up. She said she was meeting him somewhere. Neutral, somewhere safe. Jessica's voice broke. That was the last time I saw her alive. Elena pulled out her phone, showing Jessica the photo she'd taken of the text messages. Is this what she meant? This last message about coming to see him? Jessica read it, tears streaming down her face. Yeah, that's Maddie. She always wanted to see the best in people, even when they showed her who they really were. Jessica, Elena said carefully, did Madison ever mention anything about that night? Where she was going? Who else might have been there? Just Garrett. She said she was meeting Garrett. Jessica looked at Elena. Why? Do you think someone else was involved? Elena thought about Robert Cole, about his power, his control, his determination to protect his son at any cost. I think, she said slowly, that Madison walked into something much bigger than a conversation with a teenage boy, and I think people who should have protected her chose to protect themselves instead. Jessica grabbed Elena's arm. Please, please find out what happened to her. Don't let them get away with this. Maddie deserves justice. I'll try, Elena promised. I'm trying. As she walked back to her motel, Elena's phone rang. Detective Marsh. We found something, he said without preamble. Madison's car. It wasn't at a rest stop like we thought. It was found this morning in a ravine off Route 9, 10 miles from the Cole property. Someone tried to hide it. What does that mean? It means someone lied about where the car was found. It means the initial investigation was compromised from the start. Marsh's voice was tight with anger. And Elena, it means Chief Robert Cole has some very serious questions to answer. The revelation about Madison's car changed everything. Within hours, the state police formally requested that Chief Robert Cole recuse himself completely from the investigation. By evening, the mayor held a press conference announcing that Robert had been placed on administrative leave pending review. The town erupted. Half the people defended Robert, a decorated officer, a pillar of the community. Surely there was an explanation. The other half demanded answers. How could the car's location be misreported? Who had access to that information? What else had been covered up? Elena watched the news from her motel room, transfixed. Robert appeared on camera. Outside his house, flanked by his attorney. He looked smaller somehow, his uniform replaced by civilian clothes, his usual confidence fractured at the edges. I have cooperated fully with this investigation from the beginning, he said, his voice measured but strained. Any suggestion that I have interfered or obstructed justice is categorically false. I love this community. I have served this community for 25 years. I would never— Chief Cole, a reporter shouted. Did you know your son was involved with Madison Reeves? Robert's jaw tightened. I'm not going to comment on my son. He's a minor, and he deserves privacy. He's 17, and a girl is dead. My son has done nothing wrong. This investigation is being driven by people with agendas, by those who want to see me fail. Robert's control was slipping. I will not stand here and watch my family be destroyed by baseless accusations. Martin Voss stepped in, cutting Robert off. That's all we have to say. Thank you. They retreated into the house, leaving the reporters shouting questions at a closed door. Elena's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, but this time she knew who it was before she even opened it. Detective Marsh, check your email. Elena opened her laptop. Marsh had sent her a video file, encrypted with instructions to watch it privately. The video showed an interrogation room. Catherine Cole sat at a metal table, her hands wrapped around a cup of water. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Across from her sat Detective Chen. "Mrs. Cole," Chen said gently, "we know this is difficult, but we need the truth now. A girl is dead. Your family is involved. Help us understand what happened." Catherine's voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't know, not at first." "What didn't you?" "No. About Madison. About Garrett seeing her. Robert knew. He'd been tracking Garrett's phone for months. He saw the messages. He knew everything." Elena's breath caught. "When did you find out?" Chen asked. 3 weeks ago. I found Robert in his study late at night, and he was furious. Drinking, which he never does. He told me Garrett had gotten some girl pregnant, that she was trying to extort money from us." "Extort?" "That's what Robert said. He said she was trash trying to trap our son, ruin his future. He said we had to handle it quietly." "How did you handle it?" Catherine's face crumpled. "Robert gave me $5,000 cash, told me to give it to her, tell her to take care of the problem and disappear. So I did. I went to the diner where she worked. I waited in the parking lot until her shift ended, and I gave her the envelope." "Did you speak to her?" "I told her." Catherine's voice broke. "I told her to stay away from my son. That if she tried to contact Garrett again, we'd make sure she regretted it. I told her my husband was the police chief, that he could make her life very difficult." Chen was quiet for a moment. "Mrs. Cole, did you threaten Madison Reeves?" "I was protecting my son." Catherine's voice rose. "She was trying to trap him, ruin his life. I was just a mother protecting her child." "By threatening a pregnant woman?" Catherine put her head in her hands, sobbing. "What happened after you gave her the money?" Chen pressed. "She took it. I thought that was the end. But then 3 days later she texted Garrett again. Said the money wasn't enough. Said she wanted to talk. Robert was furious. He said she was trying to bleed us dry, that we had to put a stop to it." "How?" "I don't know. He wouldn't tell me. He just said he'd handle it." Catherine looked up, her eyes wild. "I swear I didn't know what he was planning. I thought he was going to scare her, maybe have one of his officers talk to her. I didn't know." "Didn't know what, Mrs. Cole?" The video went silent. Catherine stared at the table, her mouth moving but no sound coming out. Finally, in a whisper, "I didn't know he was going to kill her." The screen went black. Elena sat frozen, her heart pounding. Her phone rang. "Marsh." "Did you watch it?" he asked. "Yes. Catherine Cole is cooperating now, fully. She's agreed to testify against her husband and son in exchange for immunity." Marsh's voice was grim. "She says Robert planned everything. That Garrett called him in a panic the night Madison showed up at the house. That Robert drove there, dealt with the situation, and then staged the scene in your apartment to frame you." "She's saying Robert killed Madison?" "She's saying Robert called her that night from your apartment, told her there'd been an accident, told her to stay in the house, take her sleeping pills, go to bed. When she woke up the next morning, police were already there, and Robert was spinning the story about finding the body during a routine check." Elena's mind raced. "Does she know where Garrett was during all this?" "She says Garrett was in the main house the whole time, that Robert made him stay inside while he cleaned up the mess." Marsh paused. "But Elena, we have evidence that contradicts that. The tire tracks, the DNA on the torn fabric, Garrett was there. He was involved. So they're both lying. Maybe. Or maybe they're both telling the version of the truth that protects them most." Marsh sighed. "We're bringing them both in tomorrow. Formal charges. We have enough now." "What about me?" "You're clear. Completely. The DA is preparing a statement exonerating you and issuing an apology for the implication of your involvement." Elena should have felt relief, but all she felt was hollow. "Marsh," she said quietly, "if Catherine knew what Robert was planning, if she suspected and said nothing, isn't she guilty too?" Morally, absolutely, legally, that's for the courts to decide. He was quiet for a moment. Elena, this family destroyed Madison Reeves to protect their precious reputation. They tried to destroy you for the same reason. Don't waste your sympathy on any of them. After he hung up, Elena sat in the dark motel room thinking about Catherine's trembling hands, her fear, her desperation. A woman so trapped in her golden cage that she'd chosen to protect her abuser rather than an innocent girl. A woman who'd threatened a pregnant woman in a parking lot. Woman who'd known, or at least suspected, what her husband was capable of, and said nothing. Elena's phone lit up with news alerts. Breaking. Police Chief Robert Cole arrested in connection with Madison Reeves, murder district attorney. Extensive evidence. Links Cole family to homicide, Catherine Cole. Granted immunity in exchange for testimony. The mask had finally slipped. The perfect family was revealed for what it truly was, and tomorrow, the whole truth would come out. The courtroom was packed for the preliminary hearing. Elena sat in the gallery, watching as Robert Cole was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. The man who'd once commanded respect with just his presence now shuffled like any other defendant, his eyes downcast, his shoulders hunched. Garrett sat separately with Martin Voss. He'd been charged as an adult, murder in the first degree, his hair was neatly combed, his suit expensive, but his face was pale, his hands shaking. Catherine sat in the front row on the prosecution's side. She didn't look at her husband or her son. The prosecutor, Sarah Pemberton, stood and addressed the judge. Your Honor, the state will prove that on the night of March 14th, Madison Reeves drove to the Cole residence after repeatedly attempting to contact Garrett Cole. She was 7 weeks pregnant with his child. She wanted to discuss their future. Instead, she was murdered, and her body was staged in Elena Ruiz's apartment to frame Ms. Ruiz for the crime. She laid out the evidence methodically. The phone records, the financial trail, the tire tracks, the DNA evidence, Catherine's testimony. Then came the detail that made Elena's blood run cold. Your Honor, we have security footage from a gas station on Route 9, time-stamped at 11:43 p.m. on March 13th. It shows Madison Reeves's vehicle pulling in, and it shows a red Jeep Wrangler, registered to Garrett Cole, pulling in behind her. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Pemberton continued. We also have footage from that same gas station showing both vehicles leaving together. Madison's car following Garrett's Jeep, heading in the direction of Birch Lane. Martin Voss shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. Following a vehicle doesn't prove— Sit down, Mr. Voss, the judge said sharply. This is a preliminary hearing, not a trial. Continue, Ms. Pemberton. Your Honor, Madison Reeves followed Garrett Cole to his family's property that night. She believed she was meeting with him privately to discuss their situation. Instead, Pemberton pulled out a document. Instead, phone records show that Garrett called his father at 11:57 p.m. The call lasted 43 seconds. 7 minutes later, Robert Cole's police vehicle left the station, verified by his own department's GPS tracking. Elena's hands gripped the edge of the bench. Robert Cole arrived at his residence at 12:22 a.m. At 12:31 a.m., there was a 911 call from a neighbor reporting sounds of an argument, shouting, possibly a scream. The call was routed to Chief Cole's department, and the recording was subsequently lost. Lost? The judge interrupted. Deleted from the system, Your Honor. We recovered it from backup servers. Pemberton played the audio. A woman's voice, frightened, desperate. Please, I'm pregnant, please don't. Then silence. Then a man's voice, cold and controlled. Get in the car. The courtroom was deadly quiet. Voice analysis confirms that the male voice belongs to Robert Cole, Pemberton said. And between 12:31 and 1:47 a.m., Robert Cole's phone GPS shows him traveling from his residence to Elena Ruiz's guest house and back to the main house 3 separate times. She paused, letting that sink in. At 1:47 a.m., Robert Cole placed a call to Catherine Cole. The call lasted 90 Seconds. During that call, we believe he instructed his wife to take sleeping medication and stay in the master bedroom. He then made one final trip to the guest house. Pemberton pulled out another photograph. Crime scene photo. Elena recognized her apartment, the bedroom specifically. Madison. Reeves was killed between 12:31 and 1:15 a.m. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head and asphyxiation. She was then moved to Elena Ruiz's apartment and positioned to appear as though she'd been killed there. Robert Cole planted Madison's phone under Ms. Ruiz's mattress. He used Garrett's Jeep to create tire tracks near the scene, and at 6:30 the following morning, he discovered the body and called it in, controlling the crime scene from the start. The judge looked at Robert Cole. "Mr. Cole, do you have anything to say?" Robert's attorney whispered in his ear. But Robert shook his head. He stood slowly. "I did what any father would do," he said, his voice hoarse. "I protected my son." The courtroom exploded. The judge banged her gavel. "Order!" "My son called me," Robert continued, ignoring his lawyer's attempts to silence him. "He was terrified. That girl showed up at our house making threats, demanding money, threatening to ruin his life. I tried to reason with her. I tried to make her leave peacefully, but she wouldn't listen. She got hysterical, started screaming. I just wanted her to be quiet, to leave my family alone." "Mr. Cole, stop talking," his attorney hissed. But Robert couldn't stop. Years of control, of calculated precision, crumbling under the weight of what he'd done. "It was an accident," he said desperately. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted her to stop, to go away. But she kept screaming, kept threatening, and I couldn't let her destroy my son's future. I couldn't let her take everything we'd worked for." Elena watched Garrett during his father's confession. The boy sat perfectly still, his face blank. Not shocked, not horrified, just empty. And Elena realized the terrible truth. Garrett had known all along. He'd called his father not for help, but for cleanup. He'd watched his father kill Madison Reeves, and he'd said nothing. Because that's what Coles did. They protected each other, no matter the cost. The trial began 3 months later. In those 3 months, more evidence emerged. Evidence that Detective Marsh had been quietly gathering, waiting for the right moment. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Garrett's laptop. When state police finally obtained a warrant to search Garrett's room, after Robert's arrest removed his protective shield, they found the laptop, hidden in a vent in the ceiling. Garrett's attorney tried to suppress it, claiming illegal search, but the judge allowed it. What they found on that laptop destroyed any remaining defense. A video file, dated March 14th, time-stamped 12:07 a.m. Garrett had recorded everything. The prosecutor played it for the jury on the trial's 3rd day. Elena sat in the gallery, forcing herself to watch, even though every instinct screamed at her to look away. The video was dark, shot from inside Garrett's Jeep, the phone propped on the dashboard. In the frame, you could see the driveway of the Cole residence. Madison's car was there, and standing next to it were 3 people. Madison crying, pleading. Robert, his face a mask of cold fury, and Garrett standing back filming. "Please," Madison's voice came through the speakers. "I'm not trying to ruin anything, I just need help. The baby." "There is no baby," Robert said coldly. "You took the money, you agreed to take care of it." "I couldn't. I tried, but I couldn't go through with it. Please, Mr. Cole, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. You're going to get back in your car and drive away, and you're never going to contact my son again. Do you understand?" "But the baby is his. He has a responsibility." Robert grabbed her arm. Madison screamed, "Let me go! You're hurting me!" That's when Garrett spoke for the first time, his voice calm, almost detached. "Dad, she's being too loud. The neighbors—" "I know," Robert snapped. He looked around, calculating. Then he pulled Madison toward the guest house. "Come on, we'll talk inside, somewhere private." No, I don't want to go in there. Madison struggled, but Robert was too strong. He dragged her across the lawn while she fought and pleaded and cried. Garrett followed, still. Filming? The video went dark as they entered the guest house, but the audio continued. Sounds of struggle. Madison begging. Robert's voice cold and commanding. Stop fighting. Just stop. A thud. A gasp. Silence. Then Garrett's voice, shaky now. Dad? Dad, is she? Get the car, your Jeep, pull it. Pull. Around back. But. Now, Garrett. The video ended. The courtroom was silent. The prosecutor stood. Ladies and gentlemen, Garrett Cole didn't just witness this crime. He documented it. He filmed his father assaulting Madison Reeves. He filmed her being dragged to the location where she would be killed. And then he helped cover it up. She pulled out more evidence, text messages from Garrett's phone after the murder. Garrett to a friend. Crazy night. Had to help my dad with something. Friend. Everything okay? Garrett. Yeah. Just family stuff. You know how it is. Another message to a, different friend. Sometimes you have to do things you don't want to do. That's what being a man means. That's what my dad taught me. And then, the most damning piece of evidence. A search history from Garrett's laptop, dated March 15th, the morning after Madison's death. How long does DNA last can? Police trace deleted text messages. What happens if you're a minor charged with murder? How to clean blood from carpet. The prosecutor turned to face Garrett directly. You knew, she said. You knew what your father had done. You knew Madison Reeves was dead. And instead of calling for help, instead of telling the truth, you helped hide the evidence. You helped frame Elena Ruiz. You protected yourself and your father while an innocent woman's body lay in that guest house. Martin Voss stood, his usual composure cracking. Your Honor, my client was 17 years old, a minor. He was terrified. In shock following his father's orders. He was filming, the prosecutor interrupted. He had his phone out recording, making a conscious choice to document rather than intervene. That's not shock, Your Honor. That's calculation. The judge looked at Garrett. Does the defendant wish to make a statement? For a long moment, Garrett said nothing. Then he stood. When he spoke, his voice was flat, emotionless. My father told me that Coles protect each other. That family comes first. Always. He looked at Robert, who sat at the defense table, broken and hollow. I did what I was taught to. Do? So you're admitting you helped cover up Madison Reeves's murder? The prosecutor asked. I'm saying I did what my father told me to do. Just like I always did. He sat back down. And Elena understood. Garrett wasn't going to take responsibility. He was going to hide behind his father, behind, his age, behind the twisted logic of loyalty. Even now, even after everything, he still believed the rules didn't apply to him, because he was a Cole, and Coles were untouchable. Except they weren't. Not anymore. The verdict came on a gray afternoon in late September, 6 months after Madison. Reeves's body was found. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Robert Cole, guilty of murder in the first degree, guilty of evidence tampering, guilty of obstruction of justice, guilty of abuse of power. Garrett Cole, guilty of accessory to murder after the fact, guilty of evidence tampering, guilty of conspiracy to obstruct justice. The courtroom erupted. Madison's mother sobbed. Robert sat motionless, staring straight ahead. Garrett closed his eyes. Catherine, who'd testified against both of them, walked out before the judge read the sentences. 2 weeks later, Elena sat in that same courtroom for the sentencing hearing. Robert Cole was brought in first. The man who'd commanded this town for 25 years now looked decades older, his face gaunt, his movements slow. Judge Hartwell looked at him with something close to disgust. Robert Cole, you were sworn to protect and serve this community. Instead, you used your badge as a weapon. You used your power to cover up murder. You manipulated evidence, intimidated witnesses, and attempted to frame an innocent woman for a crime you committed. She paused. You murdered a 22-year-old woman whose only crime was falling in love with your son. You took a mother's daughter, a sister's sister, a friend's friend, and you felt entitled to do it because you believed you were above the law. Your Honor, if I may, Robert's attorney began. No, you may not. The judge's voice was steel. Robert Cole, it is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. You will spend the rest of your days behind bars, where you can no longer harm anyone. Robert showed no reaction, just nodded slowly, as if he'd been expecting it. Then it was Garrett's turn. He stood before the judge, 17 years old but being sentenced as an adult. Martin Voss had argued for leniency. His client was a minor, manipulated by an abusive father, terrified into compliance. The prosecution had argued that Garrett made conscious choices. He filmed the assault. He helped cover up. He framed Elena Ruiz. He showed no remorse. Judge Hartwell studied Garrett for a long moment. Garrett Cole, you are perhaps the most tragic figure in this courtroom. You were raised by a man who taught you that power excuses cruelty, that money buys silence, that consequences are for other people. She leaned forward. But you are not just a victim of your father's teachings. At 17, you were old enough to know right from wrong, old enough to stop what was happening, old enough to call for help. Instead, you chose to film, to document, to participate. Garrett's jaw tightened. You watched Madison Reeves beg for her life. You watched your father assault her, and you did nothing. Worse than nothing, you helped hide what he'd done. The judge paused. The question this court must answer is, can you be rehabilitated? Can you learn to be something other than what your father made you? She looked at the papers in front of her. I want to believe that you can. I want to believe that 17 is young enough to change, to grow, to become a better person. She looked up at Garrett. But I also have a responsibility to society, to Madison Reeves's memory, to every young woman who might cross your path in the future. The courtroom was silent. Garrett Michael Cole, it is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. You will be eligible for educational programs, counseling and rehabilitation services. What you make of that opportunity is up to you. Garrett's face remained blank. But then, as the officers moved to take him away, he did something that made Elena's blood run cold. He smiled, that same slight smile from the first day in court, and he turned to look directly at the prosecutor, his eyes finding her across the courtroom. My father is rich, he said clearly. The same words, the same arrogance. But this time everyone understood what he really meant. Not that his father's money would save him, but that he still believed, even now, even after everything, that somehow, someday his privilege would win, that the rules still didn't apply to him, that he was better than consequences. The prosecutor stood. Your father is broke, Garrett. Every asset seized to pay restitution to Madison's family. Every account frozen. The house is being sold. There is no money. There is no power. There is only justice. For the first time, Garrett's smile faltered. Reality crashed through his delusion. He wasn't special. He wasn't protected. He wasn't untouchable. He was just a convicted murderer being led away to spend the next quarter century behind bars. As they took him out, Elena watched the boy who'd terrorized her, who'd helped frame her, who'd participated in taking an innocent life. She felt no satisfaction in his sentence. Only sadness for Madison Reeves, who would never get to be 23, 24, 25. Who never become the teacher she dreamed of being. Who would never bring her little brother to visit like she'd planned. Who would never have the chance to decide what to do about the baby she'd been carrying. After the sentencing, Elena stood outside the courthouse. Detective Marsh approached her. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I don't know," Elena admitted. "I should feel relieved. It's over. They were convicted. Justice was served. But Madison is still dead, and I can't stop thinking about how close they came to getting away with it." She looked at Marsh. "If you hadn't, believe me, if you hadn't kept digging, I'd be in prison right now, wouldn't I?" Marsh didn't sugarcoat it. "Probably. Yeah." They stood in silence for a moment. "What will you do now?" he asked. Elena had been thinking about that. The coal house was being sold, her job was gone, her apartment was still technically a crime scene, though she'd been cleared to remove her belongings. "Go home," she said finally. "To Honduras. Be with my family. Figure out what comes next." "You deserve that," Marsh said. "You deserve peace." Before Elena left Millbrook Falls for good, she did one final thing. She visited Madison's grave. It was a simple headstone in the town cemetery. Fresh flowers sat in a vase. Madison's mother came every day, Elena had learned. She knelt in front of the grave and placed her own flowers down. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I was sleeping while you were dying just feet away from me. I'm sorry it took so long for the truth to come out." She wiped away tears. "But they didn't get away with it, Madison. They tried. They almost did. But they didn't." She touched the cold stone. "I hope that means something. I hope you can rest." Now, as Elena stood to leave, she noticed someone else approaching. Jessica, Madison's roommate. They hugged without words. "You're leaving?" Jessica asked. "Yeah, time to go home." "Thank you," Jessica said fiercely, "for not giving up, for fighting, for making sure Maddie mattered." "She always mattered," Elena said. "From the very beginning. She always mattered." 3 days later, Elena boarded a plane to Honduras. As Millbrook Falls disappeared below her, she thought about everything that had happened, about how money had almost bought silence, about how power had almost twisted justice, about how lies had almost buried truth. Almost, but not quite, because Detective Marsh had asked the right questions, because Jessica had shared Madison's story, because Catherine had finally chosen truth over loyalty, and because Elena herself had refused to be invisible. The Coles had believed they were untouchable. They'd believed their money, their power, their position made them immune to consequences. They'd believed the system would protect them because it always had. But systems only work when people make them work, when investigators investigate honestly, when prosecutors prosecute fairly, when judges judge impartially, when ordinary people refuse to be silenced. Robert Cole would die in prison. Garrett Cole would spend his youth behind bars, learning, perhaps, that he was not special after all. Catherine Cole would live with the knowledge that she'd chosen her family's reputation over a girl's life, and that choice had cost her everything. And Madison Reeves would be remembered, not as a victim, not as a cautionary tale, but as a young woman who'd deserved better, who'd deserved love and support and choices, who deserved to live. As Elena's plane climbed higher, she closed her eyes. The nightmare was over. Justice, imperfect but real, had been served. And somewhere, she hoped, Madison Reeves could finally rest in peace.